Hey watercolor wizards, so glad that you're here today. We're doing the second part of the A Court of Thorn and Roses coloring book page that I started in gouache yesterday. So hopefully we can get most of this done. I did go ahead and, if you missed the first part, then you can definitely watch the first part again on YouTube as a replay. I just did it yesterday. And also you can follow along today and watch me finish this, and this will be up live later as well. We did a few of the characters yesterday, so to recap, we did Reese down here, and we did this with gouache, Creator Color Aqua Bricks, and we also did Morgan, and we did a little bit of Azrael and Caspian up there, but I didn't do this part on the stream because it took me a whole 3 hours just to do these two. So I did go ahead and just, because this armor is so similar to what we had going on down here, I just went ahead and finished that last night. And I also went and did a stain just for the purple and blue areas. We're going to come back in and do the details if we have the time, but definitely finish the characters first. And so it'll be exciting to sort of do this, as to finish this up, because, it's just going to be a nice thing to do at home if you're all quarantined and home like we are during the coronavirus situation.
Hey, Hajra. Except she spelled your name Hijra.
Oh, wow. That's what happens with old friends. You can't spell your names right, huh? Well, it's good to see you, Rihanna. I think it's been, probably several years since we saw her. She was one of my students at UC Merced and then a friend. And it was fun because having people like her as a student was really fun, because when I started, I was 23 and the students were only like 4 years younger than me. And so it was really exciting to make friends while I was teaching at UC Merced. So lovely to see you here. Totally surprised, even though you can't spell my name anymore. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead. Oh, she says stop starting drama to you. All right. That's right, all he's got is drama. He needs that in his life. We're stuck working at home. Both of us are together in this cottage, and it's only a 364 square foot cottage, so it's
That's
like
180 square feet each.
yeah, it's like really small, so we have to like share the space with everything. And it's kind of funny because when you don't realize, when you have to like be at home together, that you have to like watch the same stuff, and like, if somebody has something on and it's annoying, then you have to sort of be all like, it's difficult. It's more difficult than you'd realize. Okay. All right. Do I have any questions or anything yet? Make sure you keep up to date with all the questions.
Do you prefer the Aqua Sticks or Derwent ink tints as gouache? I use a mix of brands but never tried it in those forms. From Shauna Riley.
I actually prefer, yeah, I'm surprised. Let me say real quick that this paper is warping a little bit, but it's because I didn't use it very wet, but it's starting to warp a little bit from when I did the stains in the background, but I think it'll flatten down again because it's so thin. I do prefer the Creator Color Aqua Sticks because I think that they're just creamier and look better like gouache, but I do feel like it is a nice option to have the Derwent ink tints as gouache, because you're basically getting kind of like an acrylic gouache option if you use those. Okay, so I think it dropped the stream for a second, but we reconnected. And that's good because yesterday we learned that at least it doesn't make you restart the whole stream as long as you hit the reconnect button relatively soon. So today I've made it so that, we have that reconnect button. I'm just going to be looking at it constantly so I can make sure that we don't sort of lose that as a, we don't lose people. But yeah, no, it's funny, the different options I was talking about for gouache. You can even use your watercolor and use it more opaquely, and then use that as gouache too. If you already have like some nice rich watercolors, you can actually use them more opaquely, add some white to them, and it'll work like gouache. So you can actually use your watercolor like gouache, you can use those Creator Colors like gouache, and of course the Derwent Intense is great if you want to have something that dries waterproof and doesn't scoot. So it depends on what you're looking for, because in some pieces I do want something to lift and scoot and be correctable later, in which case I wouldn't want to use the Derwent Intense. And in other cases I want something to be waterproof, and then they're a really good idea. And I do think that the Derwent Intense have some lower vibrancy, not with every color, but with some colors. So that's also something you have to think about is, the light fastness, the vibrancy of particular colors, and what you want to choose and use as a result of that. Trying to do different things.
Amy
like
Baker says Derwent ink tints dries quicker as well.
Yeah, it does. It dries pretty darn quick, and it's got that lovely sort of velvety, powdery finish that gouache does as well. So I would say that one of the things I like about the Derwent Inktense, it doesn't have as much of a plasticky quality to it because they really have made it sort of a hybrid product. So I would really support that, you know, as a stand-in for acrylic gouache if you want to use it. And plus it comes in a non-tube form. As Kat here, that's great. Hey Kat, thanks for joining us. All right, so I've got that part in. I think I will start with one of the characters because I think that there's plenty of stuff to do as far as the actual costumes and such. And I'm working again on this board that I just bought for like several bucks on, I think I bought it actually a few months back, but I didn't get a chance to use it till just now. And I think it was like 10 bucks or something. I can't remember exactly how much, but it has these grooves on the sides. And then you can also, it comes with like 6 rubber bands and 4 of them are this size and there's 2 that are larger. But that way you can sort of rubber band down your drawing and your painting. And it's not really tight enough for it to make an indentation in the paper. So that's actually a nice option if you want something that you want to have on top of another drawing board to tilt. Because that's kind of sort of how I like to work sometimes, is have dual drawing boards because you have something at one angle and then something else at a different angle. So, but if you are a fan of this trilogy, whether on Audible or just in the novel form, then you might know who these characters are. And again, it's a fun little trilogy to read if you like that kind of, you know, elf high fantasy type stuff. So I'm going to do this character, Farah, down here, and she has a lot of skin that we actually didn't end up covering yesterday. So I'm going to go ahead and do the skin color part of it first, and then come back in and do the actual costume, because we're going to try to go from light to sing and successful endeavor versus coming back in and doing the skin later and potentially mudding stuff, because, you know, gouache will lift up, so it's not really a good idea to come back and do that. And it's okay if it gets into some of these other areas because it's going to be covered up with a darker color. So let's just start over here. I've got some noisy woodpeckers and scrub jays hanging out and outside my window. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to catch their noise, but they all decided to show up just when I was streaming, it seems like. I was waiting for them to show up while we were waiting in the morning and for them to show up, and they didn't show up, and now they're all hanging out in the window boxes. I guess they like the live stream too. Yeah, it was really fun yesterday to do the stream, and I really enjoyed it. I always wish I could do a better job of getting people to know that it's actually happening, because I get so many people telling me later that they missed it and didn't know that it was happening. And I mean, that's too bad. I don't know how to make the YouTube notifications work better. I guess you just have to sort of be vigilant about that kind of thing, because YouTube really drops the ball sometimes with that. You currently have a woodpecker scrub jay war. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but our woodpeckers and scrub jays hate each other, and the woodpeckers are apparently the more dominant ones, and they run the scrub jays off the window boxes. So we have to, I try to do what I can to maintain some order, but you can't really get involved in their lives. It's too much drama, and they sort of don't stop hating each other. So they're just it's just the kind of thing where you have to participate a little bit and try to make sure birds aren't running each other off constantly, but also it'll drive you nuts because they can fly and you can't really make them behave. You know, it's not like having a pet dog.
Rihanna said, where did you stream? Do you announce on Instagram?
I should announce it on Instagram. I guess I didn't this last 2 times because, like I was saying, I don't usually do coloring book page art. So I didn't really want to announce it on there because it's not really my brand to do coloring book pages, but probably should have just said I was doing a gouache, and then if I used this thumb, people were like, oh, are you doing anime from now on and forevermore? And then so I just didn't want to, you know, confuse people too much, because I'm not going to be drawing in an anime style as much as I think it's fun to do that. But I did post in the YouTube community section today, but only like 10 minutes before I went on, so I did that. Okay, so I got that skin part. I'm trying to mix a dark indigo here. I think we had some yesterday left over from when I was doing the costumes for all the guys, and you can see that we played around with some rim lighting and did all that stuff on the skin, and we're not going to try to do anything more complicated than what we've got here because, you know, this paper doesn't really stand for it. But I'm going to go ahead and try to make this a purpley indigo color down there. So let's see if I can mix that over here, and hopefully that'll clear this palette up, because like I said, this palette's had a lot of paint on it for a while and just haven't had it cleared off. So and this is actually a nice black hair color for the guys back there, so still up there. So I think I don't also want to use all of that up. Just, or maybe I do and don't care. There's a lot of black over there as well. Yeah, I don't think I really care then. All right, so let's add a little bit of red and blue and purple to this to make this purple actually have some purple. I've zoomed in today because yesterday people saw my palettes more, and that's nice. But I did notice when I was rewatching my stream myself that I didn't like how people couldn't see the details of how I was working on the faces, so nobody complained. But I just did that as a sort of self change for the piece today, which is that we're going to go ahead and have it closer so you can see more of what I'm doing. And then you'll see less of the palettes unless I have them on screen mixing, but I think it's a good trade because you get one stream from yesterday where you did get to see that close up, so it's not like you totally missed that. Okay, so let's see if this is the color that I want.
We have some chat notifications. Hello back from St. Louis, says Joyce, just watching today. We'll be arting along with you. Hope everyone is doing well.
Yay.
And Amy Baker says there's a way to put a reminder in stories where people can add it to their reminders. Not sure. She's talking about Instagram stories.
Yeah, Instagram has that story section.
Sean O'Reilly says, I might try the Inktense. I've been wanting to try some acrylic gouache because gouache is one of my favorite mediums, but I can't find many. But Turner was going to get Holbein a while ago, but now I can't seem to find any Holbein sets except for the 5 mixing set.
Yeah, well, those are all the kinds that come in tubes, right? So the difference between that and me is that I actually don't use any tubes. So for me, it's always just been using the Creative Aqua bricks, the Aqua sticks, and also using the Inktense as gouache. And then also when I want to use the Schmincke or Snellier colors that I have that are more opaque and use them like a gouache. But I use all my pans and like sticks and stuff. I don't have any tubes.
Lisa Robinson says, Hajra, in addition to Instagram, use Twitter and Facebook. No need to say you're doing a coloring page. Just mention you're streaming at a certain time.
Yeah, I don't have a Twitter and a Facebook, but yeah, I think I can have somebody else maybe say that for me, or see if I can figure out at least the places I do have. I should try to make sure I tell people because I really don't do that. I always get like spontaneous ideas to do something, so it's always like not a very planned ahead of time thing. So that's also what happens. At least today, people had a 24-hour notice of me doing this, because I said to people yesterday I'd be back today, but yesterday I just sort of did it on a whim. But yeah, I really need to make better use of posting to social media when I get the chance ahead of time.
Diane is here. She said, I'm late. Husband went for groceries, then had to call me.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad she got a chance to make it.
But Amy Baker says YouTube has stories as well now.
Oh, does it? Okay.
It's been a while since you've been posting LOL. So I guess there's new features on YouTube since you sort of...
Yeah, well, I know about the community post part and like the part where you can make a video to post in that other area. I did not know there was also a story section, so maybe it's because I just never thought of making use of it, so I didn't explore. But yeah, I was not there last year in October, or at least if it was, I wasn't looking at it, so... Just gonna do this part for... to the... At least it's getting the costume done, and then we can do that. This is the kind of thing where if you are at home and you've got anything like this and you enjoy doing this, it's very meditative. Unlike, a lot of other stuff that makes you always have to speed up nowadays. You always have to be doing stuff fast, whether it's paying bills or running errands or doing whatever. This is a great way to just slow down and have a little bit of time to calm down and take care of stuff instead of going fast all the time. I'm not 100% sure that I am following the lines that are actually the right lines for the lace here, but I'm going to just pretend I am because my assumption is as long as it looks okay, then it's not such a big deal. And it is kind of interesting how even this cheap paper can put up with a bit of the gouache as a beading. You definitely couldn't do a huge amount of wet and blending in it and stuff, but it can put up with at least one sheer glaze as a stain, like we've been doing for the skin and then the background, and then work wet on dry after that. Anything more than that, you're probably going to lose the integrity of the paper and it's just going to fall apart and peel up on you because, this is cellulose. It's not cotton or linen or anything else more robust. I'm surprised by the number of comic book artists that paint on what I assume is cellulose paper, because a lot of people just paint on a Bristol board by Strathmore. And every time I hear that, I'm like, well, I guess it's because they're painting more dry and painting in gouache, because they Alex Ross is one of those people. think Paulo Rivera is another one of those people, but my assumption is they're not really using a lot of cotton watercolor papers. You know, you just sort of have to figure out how to work around something, and then you get used to it, and then you kind of know how to use it, you know? This, by the way, is a wedge brush that I'm using. You can just use a pointed round or an angle in place of this. I just happened to have this out because, again, I was painting miniatures for exhibitions that were coming up before they were postponed because of the corona round and an angle or a flat. So
Majid Suleiman says, at last, some comic-influenced illustration.
yeah, this is definitely comic influenced. I think the artist who did these characters in this particular iteration, her name is Charlie Bowater, and she's definitely influenced by anime, Disney, and for the aesthetic for these characters, there's definitely a lot of Art Nouveau showing up too. With all of that twirling and whirling arabesques and vegetal designs and everything that you see here, and also the framing and the halos and everything. That's all very, very much a Muha-inspired Art Nouveau situation. I think this is the kind of thing that would be nice even if you just had color pencils, because like I said, it's very exact, so you can sit here and do that. I think I had the most fun when I was doing it for the costumes. And the faces, because you get to do a little bit of shading. So yesterday when we were doing that, my favorite parts were the faces and then the shading on the faces, and also the hair and the shading on the hair. Anything that gives me a little bit more, you know, a little bit more sort of flex to do a little bit of painting instead of it just being a color fill, because, you know, it depends on what satisfies you. For me, I like something that, you know, allows me to use a few more of my skills than just coloring it in, so... But it is very meditative. It slows you down to do these tiny things. Make sure you stay on top of that chat, because yesterday I missed saying hi to Nanette, remember? She said hi, and I didn't see it till later. I was like, oh, I missed saying. And that's Elijah, by the way, who's here helping me.
Heather Bryant says, I love all the purple. Great job.
Yeah, that purple is going to be even more purple. There's going to be a lot of purple coming up because of the background is going to and have a lot of fun with that. And if that's something that you don't enjoy at all, then that's not the kind of, you know, coloring book or piece that you would choose. But I do like all the little ornate parts and everything. And I actually have some originals. I switched to brushes, by the way, just so I could show you that you could do this with a spotter as well. Now this will carry less paint, but it's less wobbly, so you can use it more like you're stroking down with a marker when you have like a shorter brush, you know, that doesn't wobble as much in the belly. It gives you more control over the actual paint deposit in a sort of, feels more like a pencil or more like a marker, versus those longer wobblier brushes with the full bellies. They can wobble a lot, which is great for an area where you're laying down a big wash like I did with the backgrounds and the stains and everything, or larger areas where you want to do that. But for smaller areas where you want more control, then you probably should go for a less full-bellied, shorter brush that has a bit more stiffness and spring to it. And the nice thing about that is that what it'll do for you is that it keeps it from being, you know, fatiguing on your hands as well. So like I was working okay with that longer brush, but it's more fatiguing on your hands.
Kat wants to know, will your Scout stream be 3 hours, and is that how long your classes are in person usually?
Well, the classes that we do for the Santa Cruz Art League, usually when it's not quarantine, are in person, and they're 6 hours long usually. But the streams will be 3 hours a piece, so just like that's why I was practicing doing 3 hours yesterday and today, just to make sure we knew what the, you know, technical difficulties and all that weird stuff would be for YouTube, because it's not like we haven't done a ton of streams before, but it's different when, you know, somebody tells you, okay, now you're going to be doing this for a different organization, and then you feel more responsible. So that's why I felt like I had to come back on here and just sort of, you know, refresh myself on the problems that I may or may not have. But yeah, they will be 3 hours long each, and that'll give me an opportunity for people to, well, they will be able to watch the whole thing as many times as they want, which is something they wouldn't get with a live class. And also, just like with the live class, they'll be able to get input from me on whatever their assignment is that they were doing for the class, and they can get that via email, or they can get it via phone, depending on if they're local, and they can, you know, talk to me over the phone. But it is a great opportunity to get those classes that would normally cost $100 a piece for just $35 a piece. And to have a rewatchable video to boot. And I will leave the links in the comment section. You can take the link from the other stream. It's on the other stream. I've pinned it at the top. And you can put it in the comment section. So if anybody is interested in following that link to go sign up, they can have that there. And I'll eventually put it in the comment section after the stream is over. But you can go ahead and get it from the other stream.
Sure.
I think I have 3 people who watched the stream yesterday were interested in also taking the classes, and that would be cool if I saw some people, because, you know, it keeps the comments lively, I'm sure, for people who are more used to YouTube. So, you know, like I said, the Scal audience is probably, this is going to be the first time they'll be on a YouTube live stream watching it, so it would be nice if there's people who already, you know, show up on YouTube a lot as part of that student group, because, you know, they can ask the questions that these people might be afraid to ask or don't know how to type or whatever.
Kat also wants to know, will you have your plucky assistant be helping you on the day?
Probably, at least for the first few streams, because I feel like I need a second person to run, you know, just some crowd control when it comes to reading the comments to me, so I can focus on doing the, you know, because when you're in person, people ask you the questions and you can hear them and still keep painting and then answer them, versus when you're, you know, sitting here, then you have to look down and paint, and then you can't, you know, constantly look up and read your comments. So I'm going to have him do that for sure. That way it makes it a better experience for the students. I used to. I had Patreon for 2 years. I don't anymore. I got off of that last October so I could focus more on in-person classes, and it's funny just that...
And the coronavirus.
Right, exactly. So I stopped that like around Halloween, was like October was the last month, and then right after that this year when I had a lot of in-person classes scheduled again, the whole corona thing happened. So it probably would have been a better idea to stay on if I had known this was going to happen, but I had no idea it was going to happen, just like everybody else, I guess. So here we are. But yeah, no, I don't have a Patreon now, but I do have, you can always sign up for stuff via my website, and you can also, I have a PayPal that you can find on my About page for my website if you want to, you know, buy anything from me as far as art or prints or even art videos, because I think I'm probably going to start to do a few more of those as well, just because, well, what do you do when you're stuck at home and you can't do any of your live classes, right? So probably would sell those through YouTube, so it would make it easier for people, you know, just have some YouTube things, so that way they don't have to sign up for something different. But yeah. Alright, I really like that low intensity purple here. I think that, again, when you mix the purple into the indigo we already had, that we mixed with the brown and the phthalo blue that I had on here earlier, the nice thing about it is that it keeps it from looking too different and garish. It harmonizes with what we've got, you know, what we've got here on the actual page already, you know, because these colors are looking like there's a little bit of, you want to harmonize these colors, you want to have them married to each other in some way so that they share some kind of connection. And you can do that by having a limited palette, and you can do that additionally by making sure that if you have a few extra colors coming in here and there, that you make them have the same shadow color or the same desaturating color to make them earthy, and as a result of that you end up with a lovely harmonized effect.
Patreon was awesome.
Yeah, she was one of the patrons who was there for 2 years, so I appreciate her and all the other loyal patrons that I had. I think there was about 60 people on there that supported me for that time by the end of it, and I really did appreciate it a lot. I just had to sort of look to see what else I needed to be doing with my time instead of that, because, you know, you have to sort of look at the limited resources and health you have and figure out what you want to do. Alright, I'm just trying to figure out, because there looks like there's going to be a dark and a light purple here. So one of the things I can do is ghost in the purple for the whole bodice, and again use the softer brush for that. That's the wedge one in this case, because your spotters are always going to be a little bit firmer than your other round or whatever type brushes. So you really don't want to use those if you want to do a nice light-handed glaze. And they also carry less paint, so, you know, it works both ways here. Is that you want it for both reasons. This is carrying more paint, and it's also going to make it a much lighter touch on the paper than if I used a spotter. So just be thoughtful about what brush you're using and why, you know? And you can also use a sable for something like this, because sables also have a very light touch and they are less springy and a little bit more soft than something like a nylon spotter. And this is a nylon brush, but it has a very full belly and a lot of length to it. So as a result of that, it's very soft in how it applies the paint. Okay. If I was doing this piece on my own, I probably would have done fewer colors, because I feel like they ended up with more colors on here than I would have put into a limited color piece. Like, you know, I'm glad there's a little bit of red on the other side of the page, because otherwise it does look like it's weird just to have that red. So keep that in mind, like I was saying, is that you don't want to have discordant colors. The yellow and also the red, and it does show up on other parts of the piece. It'll make it look like it's less strident and showing up in one place, but you definitely want to have it like that. I wonder what other things people are doing at home to keep themselves entertained. I'd love to know.
Kat wants to know if the halo is going to be more colors.
Oh yeah, definitely. This is going to have a darker and lighter blue and some magenta and purples in there. And I just put the glaze down as the base color so I could get the lightest color in there. And then after that, we're going to go back in and do the darker ones. Now I don't know, based off of yesterday, it took us 3 hours for me to do the two characters, these two. So my assumption is once I finish the characters, you probably won't be there to see me finish the background unless I do another stream for that. But it seems like it would be a boring stream just to do the background. So my assumption is you'll see whatever I can finish today, and then after that I'll post or share the finished one in a video when I next do something. Again, I don't know if I necessarily want to share that on Instagram, because I like to share my original art on Instagram, and people are very easily confused as to like what your brand is, and you know, and it ultimately becomes rather detrimental to your followers. You know, you accumulating people if you give people a lot of mixed messages. It really shouldn't be that way. You should be able to post like whatever the heck you want, like if you feel in the mood to do something looser or tighter or slightly different style. But what I've noticed, and also the advice I've gotten from other people, is I need to make it so that I have, you know, more originals on there and more originals of my style instead of just master studies and different styles. So I have left master studies on my Instagram, but I did go and clean it up. You might have noticed that some things just kind of disappeared if you are one of the people that follow me on there. And that's because I just decided that I needed to make sure I left the stuff on there that was more my style. So people got a clear idea if they first showed up what to expect.
Amy Baker says her armpit looks weird. Her armpit looks weird as to where it ends.
This right here? Yeah. Have a downward looking up angle that that's probably what's creating that weird angle. But yeah, if you look at where this stops, it doesn't give her much room to have where the collarbone would be, you know, the whole clavicle area and everything like that. So my assumption is yeah, this should have started, the way that she drew it, it should have stopped somewhere around here, like halfway down from where the illustrator actually drew it over here. So that's a well-spotted inaccuracy.
And Kat said she's in bed right now because it's pre-dawn. Or do you mean what art are we up to? Because you were asking what are people up to.
Yeah, I'm just asking what people are up to. It doesn't have to be necessarily art. I'm just wondering what people are doing, because I'm assuming a lot of people are at home. I mean, Elijah has to work from home now, and so do I. And a lot of the stuff that we were doing outside has been postponed and put off or whatever. So I'm just assuming people are at home doing stuff. So anybody got any fun ideas apart from like board games and such?
Rihanna said, well, here in Afghanistan on a normal day, we're only allowed to go to the office and grocery store. So now with the virus, not much has changed, LOL. Besides, we're now having to work from home. How have you guys been managing?
Well, we've been doing basically the same thing. We've only went out once a week for the last week. And even before that, we weren't going out too often. He was already coming home early, like with half days. And when they finally did the official lockdown for Santa Cruz, then he's just been at home, you know, working the whole day. But even before that, he was taking like more than half days to work at home, because they were saying if it's not an important meeting to go home, you know, where he was working. So And for me, they were doing the same thing. Initially, it was like tapering it off and saying, okay, we're going to be doing less work, less classes, less exhibits, and then it was completely shut down. And then, but they had like some spots in between where they were like, okay, we're not going to do the receptions, or we're not going to do classes this long or classes this big. We're going to keep them smaller. And then of course, when the official announcements, and we started going outside once a week to get groceries, and that's pretty much it.
Lisa Robinson says maybe those are folds from the sheer fabric, I think referring to the armpit.
Oh, yeah. That would be right. Yeah, that makes sense. And that is a good way to color them, too, as well, as like if you have the dress wrinkling all the way up. But I can understand what that illustrator is doing there for that reason. But yeah, I would still make them a little bit lower down. I wouldn't make them all the way up there because, like I said, it doesn't leave very much space for where you have no armpit. But yeah, it's obviously more wrinkled as a result of showing the sheer fabric, which I didn't think of at the time. But that's because they have all these tattoos. So I almost thought this was a tattoo, and now I realize that it's actually part of the gown. And they're the same color, so that makes sense too. But they're also the same color as the tattoo, so it's how you interpret it if you're painting it.
Kat says, being at home arting is in my wheelhouse, lol. I'm ahead of my time.
Yeah, I spent a lot of my time at home too as a result of, just being sick. And, even if you're working outside to teach or do exhibits and stuff, all the time apart from that, as an artist, you'd spend most of your time at home. You'd spend most of your time at home. So it's not that different if you are an artist and an introvert. And those are things that I am, both of those things. So I think that works not so differently for me. But for some people, it's quite a change, So for some people, they're used to spending most of their time out. So I don't feel too shell-shocked about the whole thing, but I think some people might be struggling with it as a new thing. I mean, how do you feel? You used to see people every day. Now you don't see people.
Feels strange.
Feel strange?
Yeah.
Do you miss seeing the people, or do you just miss the hustle and bustle, or what do you miss?
We all miss the hustle and the bustle. But yeah, it's just strange. But I mean, Joyce says she just received a robocall from St. Louis City Mayor to stay home. Amy Baker said, I knit and do art and don't like people, so I was born for this, lol. And Natasha Bond says, hey.
Oh, hey, Tasha. So glad you could make it. Make sure you watch the part 1 from yesterday. It's on my channel. But that way you can see the first part of this, the gouache part of it. Oh, this is gouache too, but the other gouache part of it. Yeah, it feels not so different to me because I feel like I already was spending most of my time at home. So, and part of it was the job that I have chosen to do with my life, and on the other part of it is also health. So between those two things. Okay, well this is coming along to be almost polished off for the costume, and luckily it's just not nearly as much work. What I would do for this part of it is I need to come back in and at some point shade some of that purple, the lighter purple, so it gives it a bit of a gloss. And what I mean by that is, like, if you look at the higher part of this here where we've got like the purple shading but with a little bit of the gloss to give those like the collars and all the little belts and stuff that they've got on there. So you want to do the same thing to make this look sort of satiny, because that was the whole point of doing any of these textures, is to have fun with that, right? This looks more like chiffon or georgette. This one's going to look more like velvet. This one's going to look more like it's some kind of armor and leather type stuff. So they've got a lot of cool textures that you can play with down here, and so that's what we've been doing. Okay, I can go ahead and do, I think what I'm going to do here for her fingernails is, she doesn't have anything else that's red to harmonize her with anybody else. I don't really want to give her bright red nails.
Diane said, staying home and washing my hands a lot is just normal for me, lol. And
yeah,
Amy
me
Baker
too.
said, but my 6-year-old is bouncing. Amy says, I feel like this painting needs sparkles. LOL.
Oh yeah, we are gonna definitely do that. If you might notice that there's some here already, so like right here on the necklace and right here on the headband, we put those in at the end of the stream yesterday for the gold jewelry because people voted to say that they wanted it to be the gold. The jewelry should be in just the gold metallic. So once I'm all done with the rest of it, with the characters, we'll be doing that. Okay, so let's go ahead and.
Also, Joyce says that she's an introvert and doesn't leave her house anyway, so it's not a real inconvenience for her.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of people like us who, or like me, I should say, who would be completely comfortable with that part of it. I mean, I am. I get that totally. But yeah, the sparkle will show up, by the way. It will show up later. Just all the gold parts of it would be fun. And also, there's certain parts of the border here where you can throw in some of those metallic accents and make it really fun and pop over there. So I think that there's good potential for that. All right, so let's see what I can do for the features here. And I think we used this brighter color here for, let's see if I can find that brighter color. Hopefully it still stands out as brighter on the shadows here for these characters. Yeah, that looks like it's still brighter. And if it's not, I can always go and, you know, make it a little bit more. But hopefully you can see this, like I said, closer than we were seeing it yesterday. And for this paper, try not to do too much of a gradient blend. I do a lot of gradient blends on watercolor paper, where I use a damp brush that I have in my other hand to come back in and do a gradient as far as setting that up so that you can see a little bit of a blend between the dark and the light, so it gives you a nice transition. You don't want to do that too much with this. It's not going to work as well on this paper. So it's just not amenable to it as much, so you can do a little bit of it like I'm doing now, but it does pick up the color, so you can see how it starts to pick up the gouache on this paper. And a part of it, I could use another tint to blend that as part of the gradient. So it's kind of like what I've chosen to do is do semi-opaque in some areas and then fully opaque in other areas, but it's not a fully opaque gouache piece. So, and that's fine. You can use gouache like that. It actually works just as well. There's no reason to say you have to make every piece be fully opaque, but definitely on this paper, it's a better option because this paper is not going to really like me to do all of that, and I'll lose the ink lines, and the cellulose was going to start to peel up. So, you know, we tried to do a little bit of that earlier, and it's not really something that the paper doesn't want to cooperate. So just going to throw in stuff like that. I think doing these sharp shadows is very reminiscent of how you would color with a marker as well. So if you were doing this with Copics markers or color pencils, you could totally do it very similarly, because if you notice that without those blends, that's kind of how it works out, is it works out to look kind of like you're coloring with a marker. If you took a photo of this and posted this someplace and you didn't see the brushes, you might very well think this is done in some kind of marker, because you have those crisper blends there. And if you do have to do any kind of feathering like I'm doing now, then instead of having any water in your brush, make sure your brush is rather dry. Okay. And because this part's all under the dress, there isn't much shadow that they've showed that you really see here, but we can go ahead and throw a little bit of it into the wrinkle areas just as a sort of guess as to, and also into the cleavage area, obviously, because that's where you would also see some shadow. And just not do too much with it, because you'd actually lose a lot of that definition if there was fat. So I'm gonna.
Kat says she likes purple chick with white hair. Natasha says, I'm a SAHM, so, stay-at-home mother, I believe. So usually home all the time, too. Been participating in a 30-day coloring challenge on Instagram. My kids are pretty stir-crazy. Natasha says she loves this piece. Joyce said, Amy, check out Let's Make Art. They have many projects for young children. And then Amy said, every time I do art with her, she wants to steal my good paints. LOL.
That's funny. Yeah, anytime I was home and hanging out with my mom and driving her nuts when I was a kid, I would just go into her, makeup. I didn't know when I got older that I'd get allergic and not be able to use most of it in my own life as an adult, but I had a whole lot of fun when I used to find her makeup, and when she wasn't paying attention, to go through the different stuff and like draw with it, and she'd get really angry, of course, when she found out, but it's fun to do when she wasn't paying attention. Okay. There's, again, like I said, a sort of.
So is there much difference in painting anime style stuff versus the stuff that you usually paint?
You know, it's less realistic, so you're not finding those kinds of shadows. You're doing the shading more or less, you know, it depends on, it's more like a marker type shading. That's what I was saying. It's like it has more hard edges and also more sort of disparate values versus gradients. But there's lots of anime that doesn't do that. I mean, there's some anime that decides to go for more realistic shading. So it depends on, you know, the type of illustration you're doing more or less, and less to do with actual, you know, like, it's not the style, it's more the painting of it. So we are painting it more like an anime style, and so, or a conventional anime style. Because like I said, there are definitely anime styles where people work more realistically. I'm going to add a little bit of white right here to make that chin pop, and also to mix in flat. So I'm going to give it a nice glaze of that so that it sits down and behaves, because that's what I was saying yesterday, is if you can't get something to behave on this paper, you can throw a little bit of white into it, and don't spackle it on, just glaze it on so you can make it more of a skin tone mix. But no, I mean, it is less realistic than what I generally paint with, but it's fun because, like I said, it's more like a comic book style is what I would equate it to, because I used to paint more stuff in a comic book style when I was growing up. So this is definitely reminiscent of, like, say if I was drawing the X-Men, or, you know, Spider-Man or Superman or Wonder Woman when I was growing up. This is very similar to that kind of painting. It's easier than the kind of painting I'm more headed towards doing more realistic stuff as I got older.
Tasha said her youngest keeps getting into my art supplies. I have an art corner in the living room. And then Joyce said, so typical older sister reaction. And then Amy said, oh, is that why she insists I need makeup for my birthday? Shaking my head.
Yeah, so she can use it too. I'm trying to get that in this corner. And there's definitely, like I said, there's always an ugly stage area here for whenever you're trying to do some of the shading, but it is more like comic book shading, so you're gonna want to make it a bit more dramatic, but also not overdo it, you know? So it's like an in-between amount of shading. And since the nose falls off in a soft edge, whereas the nostril is curving over onto a different ridge, right? There's a different form turning there. So see how I made the soft edge over there and kept the hard edge on this side? And again, the bridge of the nose is sort of sidling up to a harder edge, so it's like a combo. You just sort of have to be aware of edges constantly. I mean, one of the biggest differences between amateur and professional painters is the edge control. That's why you'll hear certain phrases over and over again, and edge control is one of them. Even for something simple like this, you know, you're doing a study, and this is even lower than doing in a master's study. This is doing like a coloring book page study, and, you know, when you're doing something like this, you still have the opportunity to learn. You know, you can still teach yourself how to constantly mold the different things, and we were looking at, we're getting back to the eye, so we were doing...
Kat said, what I meant was leave Purple Chick's hair white with low lights. It looks great. And Heather Bryant says she agrees.
Oh, this one? Is it this one? But
I guess, yeah.
Well, I mean, I can see that, but the actual character has red hair, so I wouldn't be able to do that in this case, just because I'm sure anybody looking at this is going to say, but the character has red hair. So you can choose costume colors, but not hair colors for people, because... I mean, I guess it doesn't matter. What do I care? I'm not like some kind of Nazi for this kind of you know, for this kind of illustration. But to go back to, I guess we'll figure that out when I look at the contrast. But we're looking at the eye here, and so here's that drawing again that I was showing in the stream yesterday. And so you can see my drawing here where we have that lid, and remember I told you it's darker here, and the highlight area here. Same thing for down here, darker here, highlight here, and then a shadow across the top of the cornea going straight across the pupil and the iris. So we already do the blue part of that over there. We're going to try to put in the shading over there. I mean, I think silver hair is quite striking, but it gives us less to paint because then it just makes it so that we, and doesn't really match with the, it doesn't make her the character. So I know there's some people in the shop and say, why did you not color this the color that the character was as far as the hair and everything. I guess that's one of the reasons why I didn't mess around too much with not making everybody have black hair. I can make those guys have. Alright, and up here, I want to make sure I put some of that shadow into the crease. See how it's very much like comic book shading, you know, like the way you'd sort of look at particular colors and leave them kind of hard and not do what you'd do for, you know, comic, for this kind of painting, at least I wouldn't, on watercolor paper, whereas I'd make a lot of these gradients quite a bit softer, but this has its own cool look to it if you do it on, like I said, this cheaper paper. And that's probably one of the reasons why a lot of those artists can get away with using this kind of paper for comic book pieces, and not this exact paper, because this paper is actual garbage, but I'm talking about like Strathmore Bristol, which is still a pulp paper, and that's because if you do less water blending of any sort, whether it's gradients or anything, then you're going to need to use that, you know, that kind of robust watercolor paper less. So your paper is dependent upon your techniques and not just your, you know, your style as far as the aesthetic, but also what are you doing with your actual techniques. Okay, so I've got, I think, the shadow up here and up here. I'm trying to see if I'm missing it anywhere else. And I think we can go ahead and throw in her lips.
Kat says, who are they? I may have missed that. A trilogy of elves called ...
This is a book called A Court of Thorns and Roses, and it's the, I don't know, the two titles after that are similar. They're like a play off of the name, A Court of Something and A Court of Something Else. But I remember the name of the first one, and she's human, and all of these other people are elves. This person's like an otherworldly being in an elf's body, but she becomes an elf through, you know, like they always do that with these people. Well, we can't stay human, otherwise I'll die very quickly. You know, they always have to change somebody into a vampire or an elf, so in this case, she gets turned into an elf through ill magical means to save her life, and she gets married to the king of the night court. I said there was different, like, seasonal courts in the elves' land, so... yeah, that's a bare bones synopsis of that, and it's a sort of loose retelling of Beauty and the Beast. Or at least it starts out that way, and then because it became a trilogy, it's sort of palette. Or maybe I can just try to lift this line a bit, because I feel like that line has really disappeared, and I'm going to start to now color them in. And I don't really remember the color that was supposed to be her eye color, and I can't really tell from the really simple digital reference, so my assumption is to give it a bit more pop. I don't know, I'm just going to make it brown. Okay, maybe I should have made them green. Give some people different different eye colors and such, but too late for that decision now. I mean, you can always lift up gouache, but so that's not really the last decision, but I'm going to go ahead and put that pupil in. See, that's why I wanted to zoom in today, because I felt like people were not able to see that yesterday. So go back over some of these lines here that are been covered up with the gouache. And you smoke that out to make it look smoky. And also do blue across the top of the eye, like I was saying yesterday. Sort of already have it on that part of the eye, but I feel like it's faded a bit, so go back and toss it in over here.
Sergio Gonzalez says, hi everyone, just popping in to see what's going on. Natasha says that her daughter loves anime and she loves Studio Ghibli anime.
Oh yeah.
Diane and others are talking about there being a lot of buffering today.
Oh.
So maybe it's just a lot of people are doing coronavirus streams. So there's a lot of buffering.
Well, that's annoying.
Yep.
Hope they're not doing that next weekend when we have to do those scout streams. I guess we don't really get to choose, do we? Unfortunately, when that's happening. So I really hope that it works out for the paid something and then the buffering really lets them down. I mean, do you know anything about why YouTube has such bad stuff? Shouldn't they have aren't they rich enough to have a better algorithm than this?
They're owned by Google, so the answer is yes.
So why the crappy algorithm then? Why the buffering for?
Could just be a lot of people. Could just be coincidence. Could just be a bad day for things.
Okay. I feel like the faces here, one of the things that I don't like about comic book art or about anime is I think everybody's faces end up looking exactly the same. At least they end up, to me, looking more similar than they should. And that was something that I was okay with when I was younger. But as I got older, I was like, why are you guys drawing everybody looking exactly the same? Maybe try a little bit harder to have a little bit of difference in the faces and such. And I think that's one of the reasons why I headed in a different direction as I got older for art. At least that was one of the reasons. But I'll still have a very soft spot always for comic book art and anything that's inspired by it. And, you know, we know also from, you know, looking at stuff historically that anime is also kind of inspired by Japanese art that was, you know, the ink art that actually inspired comic book art. So it actually came full circle. If you're a historian, you can kind of be interested into looking into that. That's actually a really cool thing. Okay, so I've got that. I think I'm going to go ahead and start working on the hair now. I do like that gingerish brown color there to play off of that. I don't know if I want to finish it off before I do the features for everybody else. So let me do her lips first and do everybody else's features, which I think is the most interesting part. So that way if anybody wants to leave while we're doing the hair and stuff, we can do that. But I think doing the faces is good practice for anybody to watch. So I wouldn't want people to miss that part of it. Afghanistan anyway?
It's a good question.
I didn't even know she was still in Afghanistan. Okay, so her lips are rather pink and not red.
So Amy was saying, remember everyone in the country is home. Joyce said, drain on bandwidth. Amy said, I don't usually get buffering with other live streams. It may be just because so many are using the internet or YouTube. And then Kat said, very Caucasian elves. Elves in her day were green.
The green? Yeah. Well, also, when we were younger and you read any kind of fairy tales, a lot of elves were like tiny, right? Like Elves and the Shoemaker type thing. So I think, I mean, not that they were like that in every story, right? Obviously, I mean, even before they made the movies in Lord of the Rings, elves were human-sized in that book. But I do think it's interesting that we've sort of moved away from doing any tiny elves for the most part. Willow had tiny elves in it, didn't it? Or were those just brownies?
Those are brownies.
Do they have any elves in there?
I don't think so.
I really loved watching Willow when I was a kid. It was like one of the few movies my parents owned when we were growing up. I watched the heck out of that movie. Okay, so I'm trying to give her a very pale stain. And again, this paper is not really cooperating as much because she's does not wear the heavy makeup that the others are wearing. The other two girls are wearing. So I'm just trying to make sure I give her some shading without it really puckering the paper, but it's difficult to do that with the like I said, with this actual paper. Not
tiny and striped socks, Kat says. And then Amy said Keebler elves are still small. Oh well.
That's funny.
You should paint Keebler elves next.
Keebler elves. Alright, I think it's mostly done, and I think I want to give her a little bit more, trying to see if I can give her a little bit more oomph anywhere. Because like I said, again, she's not wearing as much as far as embellishment makeup wise as the other girls, so maybe heighten up some of this color here to give it a little bit more contrast. Just a few pokes here and there. think that's good. Don't really want to mess about with that too much. Do think that there's a bit of a shadow here, coming down from the hairline, across the cheekbone. Did the same thing yesterday. Anytime you see that type of area, then you can use that as an opportunity to blend a little bit of that in. And I'm using a very dry brush. This has like almost no water in it because I don't want it to lift too much of that color. And give her a bit more of a ruddier chin there. But again, it's the whole danger of picking up that color and going back in there to clean it up with white. Yeah, so if you have watercolor paper, then you won't have to do this kind of patching. But if you're using a coloring book, then this is the way to go. Dry paint and patch as you go. Okay, so I think that's pretty much where I wanted that. I think she has a little bit of the rim lighting coming off of her chin as well. And this is doing some weird bloom thingy that went backwards. I'm going to reapply that because I don't want that bloom to just keep spreading. Sometimes when you put a patch over it, if it's got too much water in it, it'll still bloom. So you've got to go and fix it with more paint. Okay, and fix any more of it. Also went around the corner. I think I need to go around the corner a bit more with the chin for the shadow right here, just so it matches up with that area. I think we're pretty good to go apart from that. I mean, you would assume there was a little bit of shadow over here too. Okay. That's good. And he's got a little bit of yellow rim lighting showing up on him, so I think we might as well do that because she's literally in the same area of the painting as he is. So if other people are getting yellow rim lighting, then she very definitely should have a little bit of that too. We gave it to her as well, so he has it, she has it, so throw a little bit in over here. A little bit of that yellow. And bottom, the nose area, just like we did for him over there. It's like these underneath surfaces that are catching that yellow rim lighting, just like that. And a little bit on under her brows right there. It just adds a little bit of interest too as well, because it gives you a little bit more color and dimension. You know, you saw me doing that for the Muha pieces where if I could, I'd add in some secondary colors where I felt like we could add a little bit of contrast as far as the interest for the piece. Okay, so I think that's good. And let's go ahead and do the other two faces as well.
Kat's telling you you're nearing your first hour. You spent an hour painting.
Really? Wow. So, should I finish her hair?
An hour painting and talking to yourself.
I was talking to other people too.
You know these people are all made up.
No, they're all real. Okay, so let's see. Now the two back there, now did notice that the actual skin tone of the guys should be like quite a bit darker. It should start swarthier. But given that this paper is real junk, I think I will start them at the base skin tone and just try to do darker. He does have a little bit more of a swarthy look to him. So let's go ahead and do that for them up there too. I do feel bad about the fact that there isn't as, the paper isn't as good. This is one of those times where you feel like the paper should be better and it would give you a better grasp of how to handle the shadows, because it looks like the way that they're angled and everything, that they have way more shadow on them, but let's see how we can deal with that. So, okay, so let's try to put in more yellow shadow and with the rim light there. So that'll already make them look more medium and olive skinned, is if you make the color more yellow, more towards like an ochre. That'll automatically sort of head in that direction. So grab that brush before it tries to get away from me. And coming down over here. I think once I get these the shadows on their faces done, then I won't really worry about running out of skin tone color. And after that we can sort of mix everything else we want for everybody's hair and everybody's, the background and the costumes without having the kind of worry that we're running out of skin tone. I mean, that's the kind of thing that you might want to do if you're painting on your own too, is if you've mixed up skin tones, then do that first so it looks uniform, versus, you know, going back and forth on things and coming around and then realizing that you have to mix a skin tone again and it may not look exactly like you wanted it to look. And I don't like the non-blending that's going on here. Let's try to make that blender just a bit better. Again, his neck is almost entirely in shadow, so he's catching more of the shadow than I felt like other people were catching down there. And let's go higher up. I'll try to lay off of doing too much of it, that color though, because I don't want him to look like he doesn't match with everybody else here. So again, down the bridge here. Make sure to stay away to be softened quite a bit. Right now he looks like a scarecrow. And how to do that with this paper is the biggest challenge. That's the part of it that's more difficult than the actual painting part of it. I'm actually going to get a little bit of that white on my brush. It's always better to put a little bit of the other skin tone on your brush, the peachier one, and then come back to blend with that, because it gives you two adjacent edges to blend along instead of just the one on this cheap paper. Yeah, I noticed a lot of people were streaming yesterday too, so I'm not surprised. I think it's probably because people have been asking everybody on YouTube, like, you know, their favorite channels or whatever, like, you know, could you please stream? We're tired, we're stuck at home, you know, blah blah blah. I mean, I would do the same thing, which is like, please, now is the time to entertain us. We're all at home. Okay, make this a little bit softer along that side. Okay, it's starting to harmonize. Yeah, no, this is, it's funny, the more I shade it, the more it looks like certain types of anime, doesn't it? There's definitely a lot of styles out there influenced by that anime. And I came back, I don't know if anybody noticed, but I came back and added a bit more shading around his eyes, because when you go and put the opaque gouache down, you might lose some of the eyelashes to, it gets lighter and you lose some of it, so you want to come back in and darken that up. Okay, so I'm going to catch his eye socket here, triangle of that shadow going off to that side, coming down from that area above his eyebrow, and then shade away from it to soften those edges, or soften I should say. And again, get a little bit more of that skin color on the brush, because otherwise it lifts more. Better to mix with more of that color along in the brush. And I don't understand why that part's just lifting up, but I'll just put, I think it's that, once the paper starts to peel, it starts to get this weird dirty look to it. So right before it happens, it'll start to look dirty. So just keep an eye out for that. If you have a coloring book at home and you're using any wet color in it, as if it starts to look muddy, right after that is probably going to start to peel. More lessons for cheap paper that you shouldn't be using in the first place. Do you see any more comments over there?
Gilders Levy. Streamers are stuck at home just as everyone else is, so they're streaming more to help them break up the feeling of cabin fever.
Oh, well, I mean, the thing that makes me feel good about that is if I don't stream more, like after a few classes, like if it doesn't work with the slow loading and stuff, then at least people have got lots of other stuff to watch, clearly, so. Because if everybody's having the same idea that I had, then people are going to have lots of stuff to watch, so I don't have to feel like it's something I have to do. Maybe I'll just watch one of the streams too. Okay, so I've got that going over there, and again, that area under the eye to create that part where the lid is, you know, it's like the hollow, the well underneath your eye, but also it's the place where when you look up or down, the round eyeball part of your face is pushing against the skin, just like I was showing you yesterday on right here. So it creates that fold, and it makes it evident that you've got a good sized, a normal healthy sized eyeball, right? Versus if you are an emaciated person, then you wouldn't have enough roundness in that part of the face to show some of those contours. And so it's a good idea for, that's why some of these things look attractive to us, is because they're a signal of health. It's like these certain, you don't want to make somebody look like they're all bones and sunken in and everything like that. Alright, that's already a lot of shading for him. I think he's got more of this lighting going up towards that way. Well, everybody in this picture is rim lit, it seems like. So as a result of that, we use a lot of that is being used for some more than others. So in this case, because they're over here, they've actually got more of that. I'm actually going to try to reduce it a bit, just because I don't want to put them completely in shadow. Because I do kind of feel like it'll make it look a little bit discordant, but no harm in doing it a little bit, because I do like the look a lot. I'd love rim lighting.
Gilders Levy says, we need your streaming only if your hands are feeling strong enough for streaming more.
Yeah, as long as I don't overdo, as long as I only do a few hours a day. And then what I also have to do is, I'd appreciate, yeah, that's really sweet of you to say you watch something that I'm putting up. I can put it up if people will watch it. I tend to, just look to see how much of it is if it's not in demand, if I don't feel like a lot of people are able to make it or are not interested, then I tend not to do that. But the more I do it, the more comfortable I get. So usually it takes me a little bit to, we haven't done live streams in I think probably a year, right? I can't remember the last live stream we did. I think we did one with Star Wars Bunny ATCs when Tasha sent those Mission Magello gold colors. I can't even remember when that was. Was it for and it should reconnect?
Natasha says that was for May the 4th Be With You Day.
Yeah, that's right. It was.
Joyce says, I remember your handbag painting.
Oh, that's right. We did that purse, the gouache purse, but that purse was not a live stream, I don't think. We did that it was kind of a live stream because Elijah was talking to me, but it wasn't live to everybody else. We just ended up filming it in the style of a live stream, in that he was talking to me very conversationally the whole time. So I remember that was a really fun conversation, actually, that we had when we were doing. Come back down around here. For some reason, I feel like, that's what I mean by drawing with your paint. There's no harm in coming back and forth and seeing what you feel like looks like the right shape for certain things. You're not going to find it immediately for some of these areas. For some areas, it is immediate. In other areas, it takes a little bit of a jog to get there and try out the different things. And that's what the paint is for, is, you just like with your pencil, you erase with it. You do the same thing with your paint. You can go back and forth. I think I'm pretty good with that. I do see a bit more shading that we could do if we made the whole face darker and had more room lighting. But again, I'm trying to keep it at the level of what I feel like other people in this page have as far as shading goes. So I don't think I will add a third color as far as that goes. Now if we could just get that guy on that side in, then we'll have all of the yellowish ochre skin toned color is going to be no longer in use. Whatever it is that you're doing, whether you have chronic pain and injury from something like I do, or you've got something else, you just have to take care of yourself now more than ever, but also don't let yourself get bored stiff, so that's what I always ask myself, is if I'm using my hands and they're going to hurt, and then am I trading it for something that's more boring, because you got to feed your soul too. And so, you got to do art. For me anyway, it feels very soul feeding. And so I kind of feel like I've got to nurture my soul and my creative side, and then make that as a trade for other stuff that I might be doing on the same day. Don't do something else and instead do something that I feel like is more nurturing. So definitely put art in that category for me. Okay, so we've got Hayes mostly done there. And I'm going to go ahead and try to see what we can do for his features and darken all that up. And then we can move on to the next guy and then the next person. And then after that, we'll just have hair and stuff. And I think it's exciting, because if you have any trouble with doing simple shading on faces, then hopefully this will be a good example of how you can do that with gouache simply, because you'll have seen me do it like, you know, basically 6 times by the time it's done. Alright, so he's got gold eyes too. It's like there's a lot of people with brown eyes in this. He's got brown eyes, and he's got brown eyes, and that's a little bit too opaque as far as the brown goes. I'll get rid of some of that. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the streams for Scal, because I'm excited about teaching the drawing and the grisaille and all that stuff, and it's exciting to have more of an agenda for me. I love having like the whole thing laid out, go to different parts of what I'm trying to teach and go through a process. I mean, it as a background, teaching background with from what I came from, so I like structure is what I mean. I like the structure of having a whole class laid out. That's probably the other reason why I'm less comfortable doing streams versus pre-recorded videos, because I feel like I can really create something that is more edited and sort of more tailored to very specific detailed information and concise, and without any of the gaps and empty spots that you have when you're just sort of, you know, speaking live in a live stream like this. So that would be my major reason, apart from the quality of YouTube live streams, to do pre-recorded videos. But maybe what I'll do is do more pre-recorded videos, and that way you don't have to worry about the buffering. And, you know, I was going to do less of them this year because I had more live classes and exhibitions, but since those are currently postponed, maybe I'll go back to doing a few more videos at least, and that way people can enjoy that and not have to worry about the buffering problem. Because I think that to me gets to me after a while. I always think to myself, what about the quality of the stream, you know? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put the highlight in.
Joy said the first time I saw you, you did a video with Mind of Watercolor.
Oh, that's right. That was a live stream too, actually.
And then Kat said, how will you pack it all into 3 hours?
Pack
the class.
The class? Well, the first class is going to be the color theory. So really, depending on where you're teaching and what you're teaching, you always have the option to make something longer or shorter. So you can have a 2-hour class, a 3-hour class, a 6-hour class, you know, on the same subject. That's part of your job as a good teacher, is to figure out how to make it meet the length of the venue that you are using that class for. So when it's an in-person class and they give you a certain time limit, then you fit in the material by having more demos or more detail. And then when it's a shorter class, you reduce demos or detail, or you make certain things more concise, you know. It's all very, for me, it feels very second nature, because again, you know, if you go and lecture different places, you might be doing the same topic, but if you have a different time limit for different areas or different tools and such, then you just have to taper it. So for me, I don't worry about that. But yeah, I think there will be plenty of good information to fit into a 3-hour class for the color theory, and also lots of good information to fit into the class for doing the grisaille underpainting. And what I was going to do with the grisaille is show define the whole thing, show the different types of it, and then do a demo of that grisaille, and then after that show people what they can do with the layers on top of it, because there's different ways to work with that, right? Instead of just doing a single color, you can do different variations of what you put on top and everything. So try to make sure that I have a demo that people can work on in 3 hours, and also go through the examples with me in that amount of time. So that would be the case for the drawing class that's coming up, and also the grisaille class, and also the color theory class. So, and those are in the 3 next consecutive weekends, like I said. The next 3 Saturdays from 12 to 3 as YouTube private live stream for the people who sign up.
Amy said, I watch artists because I can only sit with my back issues for a few minutes at a time. You guys are an extension of myself. But I did get my iPad Pro to be able to do art not sitting, but it's just not the same.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on your needs and, you know, what's most comfortable to you. So definitely, I mean, I would definitely do it that way for my own reasons, for health reasons, is to have it at home. All right, I think I'm kind of running out of this yellow ochre, so we're going to have to, first of all, I'm going to have to come back and do his rim lighting and such in a different way. But I'm also going to have to try to figure out, well, first of all, I kind of feel like you needed to have more shading over there, but we won't do that just right now. Well, actually, maybe I will. Why do I say stuff that I'm not going to do? I'm going to go ahead and just correct that real quick and make that come forward. And I think the other thing I wanted to do for sure is make sure that color, because like I was saying before yesterday, these three are part of the same court, and they're either related or from like the same sort of like bloodlines or whatever, so you don't want them to look like too different. So he's supposed to be the king, and so therefore the best. So we're basically.
So you're gonna paint them all green?
No, I can't make them all green.
Make Cat happy.
We should have done that from the very beginning. Like if we wanted to do weird, cool, different colors, we should have made one person blue and the other person green, and it would have been cool because it could have still used the same rim lighting and the same everything else. But we really just would have done it with, you know, the different skin colors. But I think people have trouble figuring out where certain, you know, why we're applying certain colors. So I think it's more useful for people if you just do it like this versus confusing them further and doing that. But I would have loved to have done it. And next, if I had, you know, it to do again, I only have the one page, then I would definitely do it with them in different colors, because I think that makes them cooler and more fantasy, and also lets you have more fun with the colors, like, you know, the ones that you're choosing off the palette. But it would really make the background a big mess, because then you'd be like, well, this person's green, that person's blue, and that person's whatever, so how do we now choose the background colors, right? Because the more skin colors you got, because skin colors actually, to us as human beings, naturally we think of them as a neutral color that doesn't take up any color scheme. So earthy browns and also black and white, they all stand in neutral in our head, and we don't really think of themselves as extra colors in a color scheme. But if you went ahead and made people's skin different colors like the way they do in, like, you know, Star Trek and the different skin colors of aliens and such, then you have to sort of keep that in mind for a piece. You know, you can make it very busy very fast, because those colors are no longer going to read to us as neutrals, because, you know, as human beings we don't consider spectral colors to look neutral. They're part of a color scheme, and doing that too much could make it discordant. So definitely a good idea and a fun idea to do, but needs more planning than an earthy skin tone, because all the natural earthy skin tones don't take up any space as far as in our minds as far as an extra color. Okay.
Joyce said, I'm working on a good finch. I painted one yesterday and the wing looked like a pea. Sorry, wing looked like a leopard seal. Crazy.
What kind of finch? I would love to know. I like, we have a few finches that visit us. I think we've got house finches that are the western house finches that are also mistakenly called Hollywood finches, that have that red, orange color, and then it fades to a gray further down. And we also have the lesser goldfinch, who is a very beautiful buttercup yellow goldfinch of a smaller size. So I'm interested in which finch she's painting. But those are the finches that show up at our place. So you can see I'm doing more of the rim lighting type effect on him. And I'm actually doing a more and more limited version of the shadows because again, I could cover his whole face in the darker color and just leave the lighter in the rim lighting. And because we're trying to make it so that the base color looks more or less the same for everybody, we're actually not doing, you know, a mid-tone. It's basically like the two colors. So if you were going to do this on a more fleshed out paper that is able to put up with stuff, then you'd probably have a mid-tone that you would have here as well, at the very least, along with the two colors. But you can see it looks like very dramatic comic book lighting, because what we've done is just have the base skin tone and then the rimlet skin tone without it having any midtones in between. Just the base color with the shadow color and the rim lighting. I'm trying to think of which 80s or 90s show these characters are reminding me of. Can you think of anybody this is reminding you of? Because I feel like this is reminding me of some older...
Thundercats?
No, not exactly Thundercats. Something like that, though. Because they're not, you know, they're human, or human-esque, so... Well, not a very disparate category, but for the book's purposes it is. Okay, so I think I managed to use the last of that ochre before it ran out. I'm just now running out of that ochre. So if I could just stretch it just a bit further, just a little bit further to get to that part on his neck, because I really feel like I run out of color here. So let's see. I'll move that over here and show you what I've got. So that was the ochre that I was using. I'm just trying to mix a little bit more over here with this yellow that I had to just get a little bit. And as you can see, I'm running out of the yellow and out of this flush color for the skin. So I'm kind of like in the middle of trying to get all of these colors. I might just add a little bit of this skin color, hold on, to here and to the yellow. Try to make an ochre of some sort. This is what happens when you run pretty low on the color, is that you start to, I don't want to mix a whole new batch of it, is what the issue is, but. Alright, let's see, does that match close enough? Yeah, that's pretty close. I figured it would be, and if it wasn't, I was going to just pretend like I didn't care.
Joyce keeps having a hard time because her autocorrect keeps changing it to good finch.
Okay, but it's a goldfinch, okay.
And then Amy said She-Ra and He-Man.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I kind of really am getting like the feeling is a very 80s vibe feeling here. Yeah, I really like, I've always really enjoyed comic book art too, so I think that anything that kind of reminds me of that. You know that brother and sister? Can't remember their names right now.
I can't tell you.
Well, it was a long time ago. Okay, so let's see. I think I've got pretty much everything. I just got to sharpen up some of these shadows because some of them have faded because I was really working with the last dregs of that until I mixed some more. And try to add a little bit more of that. And I might, you know, come back later and notice some areas that I feel like I didn't do justice to or something, and then, you know, come back in and add a little bit more of that. So it's not, you know, it doesn't have to be completely finished. I just wanted to do most of it here so that you guys could feel like you saw the process of it, because otherwise, you know, I don't really know how I did something. Okay, so I kind of feel like that's doing all right here. And doing all right, I think. And I think I need to come back with the yellow rim lighting, and then color in their hair, and then shadow their eyes and everything, and then we're ready to, like I said, it takes a long time to do the faces, but the faces are the part that I think people sort of show up for. I don't think people show up for the other stuff that's less complicated. I mean, that stuff is fun too, but where you learn the most is the faces, is my assumption. Alright, so now all of these dudes have got, like, dark hair, so this is gonna be a darker hair situation for all of them. And also, her...
Joyce said, I have many different finches that come, but no scrub jays. And Lil Devet said, hi, Hajra, finally caught one of your live streams. Great channel, I learned so much from you.
Oh, wonderful. What was the comment before that?
Joyce saying that she got lots of finches, but no scrub jays.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we've got a couple, a husband and wife scrub jay and a floater. It's one of her kids that hasn't quite moved on yet, and sometimes they tolerate him and other times they don't. So he's just kind of around. Oops, I forgot this guy's ear. And it is easier to not have to do the gradient blends, you know, for a lot of this, just to sort of say it's okay to leave it, like I said, more like a marker shading for this cheaper paper. So, you know, it kind of gives you an excuse to not have to work as hard as you would, say, if it was a, you know, a different type of piece where you had better paper and everything, where you'd have to work harder. I think that was a piece of his neck that we forgot to color in earlier. So that's that, and I think I'm going to try to now just darken up everything. I'm trying to figure out if I want to do her skin first. Probably do all the skin like I was saying, finish up all the skin, and so that way we can get that, do her face last. And hers is interesting too because she's got the most upward tilt to her face, so she's going to have the most sort of dramatic lighting coming down from the bottom. It's actually pretty similar to her face actually on this side, but just with a bit more on the a little bit more on the tilt section, but not terribly different. I'll give that a little bit of rim lighting. And come around to this side. Just having that hard color there is okay. It fits in with the vibe of the rest of the piece, you know, the comic book vibe and the lines and everything. And if it really bothers you, the hard edge, then you can, like I said, come back with a little bit of the skin color, the lighter skin color on your brush, and try to avoid the water, because the water really isn't going to activate well with the actual paper here. So try to make it so that it's more of a skin color that you pick up and less of a, you know, blend gouache with more gouache is what I'm trying to tell you. Do not blend gouache with water if you're on a cheap paper like this. You can do it with water on a better paper. So I'll try to keep that side and go right there and skip the edge, go all the way around, and again it'll make it easier for us to add that yellow rim lighting cleaner. You can do it anyway opaquely over the top, but it just makes it even cleaner and easier if you sort of pay attention to where you're having those folds and everything, and just sets you up to succeed more, you know? Okay, so she kind of had an upward tilt, and we saw how we did that shadow on her nose over there. She's got her nose turned to the side a bit, so she's kind of got the shadow showing up on this side and then heading up in a triangle that way, and we have to sort of soften out that edge. Actually, if you watch that Sunblom Santa study that I did in gouache, he's got a similar sort of nose that is sort of kind of at a similar angle, not quite as an extreme angle, but the tilt of it and the shading of it is similar as to what's going on here. I don't think she ever thought, as she was being drawn, that somebody would say she had a Santa nose, but she does. Okay, and come back around here and soften this off a bit, just if I can. A little bit of the skin tone. And I did notice the phone shakes because I'm streaming off of my iPhone. It's not as good quality as if you were going to use an actual, you know, the camera that I've got, but I don't really have any suggestions if anybody has them for a stream card that works really well with an Apple operating system. All the stream cards that I've gotten are a little bit iffy. I'll try again, but I think my assumption is that I won't keep up doing live streams with more pre-recorded videos, just because people won't have to worry about the buffering. I do really love the live comments though. Like when I hear from people in the comments live, that's really what makes the live streams worth it. I just wish the audio video quality was consistent so that I wouldn't feel like it was a drain on people's time without the quality being the same, you know? As this fades towards the center here, it's okay to have that Terminator line along the shadow be a little bit lighter instead of it being a complement of the two colors in between, like, you know, a variation. That's what you would usually do for something like that. But in this case, I'm not doing that because, again, we're doing very minimal colors here as far as the skin color. But keep that in mind, is that when you get to that line or area between the highlight and the shadow, that color right there is usually the darkest. That's usually where you have your darkest, most saturated skin color when you're doing a painting, you know, if you're doing realistic shadows. So that's something to keep in mind. She's got a real high up tilt, so I'm going to give her a little bit of a shadow in both directions. That's sort of showing up underneath her brow and over her brow to get both, because again, she's got like that kind of tilt. And I think we're sort of going to miss, because when you tilt your head up like this, then the wells that you get when you have your head pointed down, you sort of miss out on those wells. It's higher up, your cheek has filled up that part of it, so you don't get to see much of that. So that's why she's gonna get that part skipped. Okay, and She's likewise going to have very little shadow under her lip here because her lip is higher up, so it's losing all of that chin shadow. You're getting it all across the side of the face instead.
Kat said it tends to buffer. It only tends to buffer when you say something really instructive. So
Just
talk more about Keebler elves.
Just when I say the important stuff? Well, I guess you probably would have noticed if I was completely quiet. You'd just think it was just buffering like normal. Yeah, well, you can talk about something completely useless.
That's what I'm here for.
That's what you're here for.
Why they pay me the big bucks.
I mean, a lot of this is, I think it's a quieter stream than for me, than for yesterday. Part of it is because we talked so much about exactly what I was doing yesterday, so we got a lot of that worked out in the last stream. I did rewatch it on double speed, where I sound even more like a chipmunk. Well, I guess I don't know. I don't think I sound like a chipmunk when I talk normally, but people do think I talk fast. Nobody's ever said I speak like a chipmunk. They don't tell me I'm high-pitched. I'm sure, pitch my voice lower than, definitely my sister. But I think it's funny because when you watch it on double speed, you get to sort of, I look for what I could fix for the next time around. And I was actually happy that the buffering didn't cut out most of the important information. And there was a lot of good information in that last stream about what I was painting and how I was painting it and the tools I was using. So we answered a lot of those questions along the way yesterday. So if you are interested in having any of that information, then it's definitely there in that stream from yesterday. And I think that's the nice thing about having the whole 3 hours up. I think I cut off the first minute in the beginning, and then like the last 10 minutes. Because the last 10 minutes I was sort of repeating myself and asking people if they had questions or more questions or whatever. So it ends abruptly. You don't get to see the metallic part of it anymore. I mean, you did get to see it if you saw it before last night. But when I re-edited it, it didn't really give me an option on YouTube to edit it in such a way that I got to keep that very last part of it the way that I want it. So a little bit of it is missing. Like I say, once this dries down, it should dry down a bit more even. But I think I'm mostly done with that. And I think I'm going to add a little bit of pop for the skin color on her arms and stuff, just like we were doing for everybody else on the other side. And I tried to make the two girls a bit more, well, actually all three of them a bit more ruddy, and the guys a little bit more ochre in their skin color. So you can see that as a slight differentiation. Now, if I'd had, like I said, better paper, we could have had a lot more fun with the skin tones. But I said, given how busy this actual piece is, I think it's probably good that we went with conventional skin tones. But we could have, at the very least, played around with the values of the skin tones. I made some people a lot darker or a lot lighter. And that's something I just didn't think to myself as far as changing up the characters that much, because I just thought to myself, well, there's a lot of other stuff to focus on as far as texture, so I didn't really think about that as a focal. But if I have time, I might go back and make some of the skin tones slightly different just for fun later on. Okay, so I think that's most of the work done on the skin tone, and I think I want to add a few areas of ruddiness around her face, just like I did with the other girls. So just to give that a little bit of to mix a little bit more of that into my dirty palette now. That's getting quite dirty. It's kind of hard to see some of that in the darker areas already. And those are eyelashes. I guess they just didn't get colored in. Or it's the top part of the eyelid, but I think I'm going to make it smoked out. So I'll put a base color there, of course, and try not to make it too thick. And I think that's fine. I'm actually happy with how all of this turned out on this side. I think once we did the first two faces yesterday, I think we actually went faster through these faces. And that's the other thing that happens when you practice something, right? Is even if you've done it a bazillion times before, the more times you do it, the faster it goes. Okay, so I've got that, and I don't think I keep thinking about any other place I want to add shading to her. But she really is catching so much of that light straight ahead that doesn't have much of it. Okay, so we can do the rim lighting on them later. I might catch the rim lighting like I did a little bit of the yellow on these three. I might come back and do that for those three, just so it doesn't become just their faces. And let me just go ahead and finish up. And I think for me, because she's going to have the black hair too. Uh-oh, that's way too watery. Let's see if I have something to dab that with. Just trying to give her, I think I was trying to give her green eyes is what I thought, just for a difference, because there's people who've got brown eyes and blue eyes. And this green looks very blue at this size because it was like a minty green. So maybe I should have tried harder with a different green. But I think that looks pretty, especially given that the purple is a near complement. I think it actually works really well. It's bringing out the green. And the only thing I used the gel pen for in these pieces was for the highlights in the eyes, but you can definitely use your spotter brush with the white to do that as well. And go ahead and drop in the darker color right here. Just a tiny stupid little pupil on here. And again, you can do this with an ink marker if you want, but I just prefer to have the same tool out the entire time. And I think the other thing you can do is, you know, depending on the tools you've got, you can sit here and use all sorts of different things for the white, right? So you've got white gouache, you've got white ink, got white gel pen. Some people like to use Posca pens, you know, it depends on all the different possibilities for white that you've got lying around. Let's see, how much of this lid, I think she sort of has the more heavier makeup here, so I think I'm going to go ahead and just color that all. The nice thing about gouache is it goes on very creamy, so you can continue to blend it. Like I said, it's not waterproof once it's put down. So you can't do that with an acrylic or an Inktense, but you can do that with the gouache.
Akrif Abusadia says, I use corrector for highlights, and he has little teary-eyed emotions. White gel pens aren't available where I live. Well, Posca is available, but they're thick.
Well, I think my favorite highlights and stuff is just the white gouache. So if you have a white gouache, whether it's a liquid or a tube paint or a pan, although the liquids will be sort of more saturated if you want to use them. But they're really a nice way to do that. But I mean, gel pens dry out, they misbehave, so you don't have to feel too bad about not having them. But definitely look into seeing if you can find a gouache that is in a stick form or a pan form or a tube or bottle form, jar form, you know. All of those will work really well for her. Okay, so I went ahead and give her more of the eye makeup there because, like I said, I think she's the one who had the more vibrant lips and she's the one who had the more sort of smoked out eyes, so live vicariously through these people who can actually put on all this makeup without having allergic reactions, right? Alright, so I got all that going.
Little Duvette says, wow, this could pass as a watercolor painting. It's not as opaque as some gouache paintings. How do you alter your technique or approach to painting when using gouache versus watercolor?
Well, the magic thing about both gouache and watercolor is that they are diverse. So you can use watercolor all the way from transparent to semi-transparent to opaque. You can even make watercolor opaque even though it's conventionally used transparent or translucent. Well, it's the same exact thing with gouache. You can go from using it translucent all the way to using it to semi-opaque to all the way to opaque. So it really depends on how you want to use it. And you can, you know, but I do think that watercolor looks best transparent and gouache looks best opaque or semi-opaque just because the pigments are ground finer in watercolor, so they look better when they're actually put down more transparently, and vice versa for gouache, they look better when they're put down opaquely. But if you only have the one set, you can really make it go both ways for both of them. Now, when it comes to actually altering your technique, basically all you'd need to do is say, okay, well, I've got white watercolor here and I want to use it opaquely, so you'd use it thicker instead of in glazes. And with gouache, what you end up doing is, because it doesn't really work as well in glazes, you know, gouache is not really a glaze-happy medium. What you would do is you'd put it down in one glaze is probably, I think maybe 2 is the most that it would take, because it starts to pick up on itself, like we were looking at that yesterday when we were doing some of these areas. And so what you would do then is that you do that semi-opaque glaze for the first 1 or 2 layers, and then after that you'd choose wet and dry areas where you'd come back in, and then you'd sort of sit there and say, okay, which part of this do I shade out in a gradient to make it kind of transparent? So that's kind of what we're doing here, where there's like a glaze here, which is put down more like in a watercolor fashion, and then more opaque paint that's done in as the rim lighting shading. And there's all sorts of steps in between. You know, you could have made it more opaque, less opaque. You could have stopped wherever you wanted. And of course, I'm doing more lift out right here. I talked about the lift out technique yesterday, which is great for gouache, something that you probably did naturally. I know I did when I first got gouache paints, is because you saw it lifting up, so you could use it for correcting and highlights and such. So that's definitely something that you can, make use of gouache for, is that you have this amazing capacity to lift it up in a way that watercolor is stubborn, because it's going to stain more usually. But yeah, you mean notwithstanding the few differences in their traits that come naturally as a result of being transparent or opaque, you can sort of exchange the techniques and use some of the same techniques for both. But definitely, what you do want to do is make sure that if you want to use gouache transparently, that you make use of a pick out technique like I'm doing now, so you can have some, semi-transparent highlights and such. And the other thing that you can, do if you want to use it semi-transparently is have some areas of glazes and other areas where there's, a patched in area of certain, darks that go in. So like what I was saying with the hair, this is opaque, then that's transparent and back to opaque. So basically it's replacing having a white everywhere with just using the white of the paper again. And that really turns it back into more of a watercolor piece, or a mix between a watercolor and opaque watercolor or gouache piece.
Joyce said, I like the tube paint covers without much bleed through.
Say that again?
I like the tube paint eye covers without much bleed through.
Okay. So
and Diane says the piece really comes alive with the facial contouring. It's a really nice effect.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's why I did that first, just so I could get that dimension in there. And now we just have all that area of the hair and such to do, which is going to be a bit more of a chore to get all those in. But looks like we forgot her ear. Let's put that ear in. I think I'm going to work on her costume after this, because I can have some more fun with the costume, and then probably do a little bit of the hair and the background until we run out of time. But I'm just glad we got done with all of the faces, because that's what I wanted everybody to see, was all of the faces before this was over, because those are, again, the hardest part, right? So again, I put down a sheer glaze of that local stain, and then I'm more opaquely putting in the shadow color. And see how that way I can have a little bit of an area that's sheer and a little bit of the area that's opaque. And so you don't have to have it so the entire page is fully covered with opaque paint. You have some areas of glazing and some areas of opaque, and that's how you would sort of make it work like that on this paper and also for this style. Okay, so I think I'm going to do her costume now, and in here, it's kind of like a silvery color. So I guess we could have that show up in like with a shadow color of purple. I'm trying to think if I want to do it in some other color that would match better with the rest of the piece. I mean, I'm thinking it would be more harmonious to make it red, or some type of red. Maybe we can vote for a color for her costume, because I don't really want to make it that gray or white on that side. So does anybody have any suggestions? Now don't choose purple or indigo, because there's already too much purple and indigo in this actual piece. But if you have any other suggestions, what color?
Amy says pink.
Pink, okay.
And then Amy also said, oh my god, thank you, my OCD was about to point out the ear, LOL.
Yeah, it's funny how...
Cat says pink, question mark?
Okay, pink it is.
Vet says orange.
Okay, orange. And I'll wait for...
Red from Natasha.
Okay, red from Tasha. So I guess we can make a compromise, because those are all sort of in the red family. So we have
red from Akrif.
Okay, so how many of each are there?
2 for pink, 1 for orange, and 2 for red.
Okay, so we need one more to break the tie. So
I guess.
Yeah, for the 2 that are leading. So if you can have one more to...
Red.
Red? Okay.
from Gilder's Levy.
Okay, great. Well, that's actually the choice I would have done because I was saying bookending. So
and
I hope
Diane also says red. Diane's just jumping on the bandwagon.
I think I would have. I hope I didn't subconsciously influence people to choose red because I was saying that it would bookend the color. So I was saying
paint it.
I hope I didn't make people like choose that, but. Okay, so let's back to the red, and I happen to have I had red and orange and pink in the palette
Isn't
here.
red just pink? Isn't pink just red with more water?
Well, pink is red that's a cooler red, depending on how you define it. So there's actually people who fight about that, believe it or not. Yeah, so some people will say that it's just red with white in it, so it's not actually a separate color. Some people say that it's magenta. Other people say it's a cooler red, you know, again, a magenta. So it depends on who you ask. I think for me, the answer is show me the color and I'll tell you, because not all colors are created equal, including all pinks. You know, it's all relative. So for me, it definitely is a relative situation where you have to like look at it and then decide. Okay. In the case of magenta, for example, it's just a cool red, you know. But all right. So now her necklace is supposed to be red too. I don't think that matters. I think we'll just make it. I'll make it a darker pomegranate red or something. So. Oh, and then the other thing I'm going to do is probably in this case, because I wasn't going to do that with the other side of this dress because it had like a lot of little sections, so we didn't do a stain. In this case, I think I'll do a stain first. And that way we can have all of that covered. And then if we want to come back, in fact, I might make that necklace metallic instead, so that way it stands out more, but you know.
Hold on, there's a lot of comments. Amy said, push pink is red lightened, and the Fabulous Idiot said bandwagon red. So is that a particular kind of red, bandwagon red, the kind of red you would paint a wagon?
More like fire truck.
I like the idea of red balancing the other side, Diane says. Kat keeps talking about the underarm, left underarm area. And Amy says push even. And then Lil Devette is changing her vote to red because everybody wants to be on the winning side, except for Kat, who wants green now because she's a Keebler Elf obsessive. Joyce has an actual question.
Okay.
So let me finish up the color things. Natasha says red is magenta, add yellow, in my opinion. Amy said that they're all traitors. Diane says, LOL at the Fabulous Idiot saying bandwagon red. Maybe go a bit to the yellow side of red from Gilder's Levy. And Cindy says red, LOL. But Joyce has a real question. Was there a time early in your painting that you destroyed something that you completed because it did not give you joy?
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever destroyed a painting? No.
Oh, I have.
No. But you've never regretted it.
Oh, I have regretted.
It's always been the right decision.
Shut up.
To
this
throw
is
ink on a painting or tear it to pieces. Or scribble like graffiti.
Okay. When is the last time I threw ink or tore up a piece?
Or wrote graffiti on it?
Or wrote graffiti on a piece. When's the last time I did that?
Tuesday?
No. Tell me the truth. When's the last time? Like 10 years ago.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so I did that a lot when I first started, but I haven't done that for 10 years. And I'll tell you why. It was a sobering, sort of a more of a spiritual situation, whereas I thought to myself before, I could always recreate something. So I was pissed off, I'd tear up pieces I wasn't happy with. And then when I got sick with the hypermobility pain and everything, started to realize that it was a gift to be able to do even what I was doing, even if it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do at the time. You know, you're always developing as an artist. And so I started to become way more tolerant with myself and to be more forgiving of myself. I always have an easy time doing that for other people, for their work and for whatever it is that they're doing, but never with my own stuff. I was always too hard on myself, and I think to some extent I still am, because, you know, old habits die hard. But I did learn after I got sick that I did not want to feel like I was not being grateful for what I could do with the limited time I did have with my hands. And so as a result of that, I stopped doing that. But so the last time I did that was probably around 10 years ago. And after that, I sort of made a promise to myself, because I did get sick with a lot of hand pain and joint pain and injuries, that, you know, that I wasn't going to do that anymore. So yeah, so yes, I did do that, and no, I don't do it anymore, or at least I try not to. Nowadays, if I don't like something, I usually just turn it over and paint on the other side, or I can paint over the whole thing with like, a gouache and cover it up and have it be completely a new piece of paper. But I try not to have an old painting around that doesn't make me happy, because, there are definitely pieces that you look at and they don't give you joy. And instead of tearing them up, I try to either rework them in a different medium, or I turn the paper over and do the other side. But yeah, I did used to react to it with, I think, which is a more volatile reaction, just to destroy it. And I've just felt like the energy there wasn't good for me. I needed to control the negativity I had towards my own work, so I sort of do that less. But I think if you could do that with a very light-hearted spirit, like if you're doing it and you find it fun, then it's coming from a completely different place than how I was doing it. So it all depends on how you do it, right? If you do it in a very carefree way and it's cathartic for you, or it's like some people love doing that. They love taking their old pieces outside and lighting them on fire with a lighter and stuff and getting rid of a lot of old things that are piling up. So it all depends on who you are and how it makes you feel. And if you're doing it and it makes you feel happy and funny and it's cathartic, then great. But if it makes you feel angrier about yourself and angry about your work and the stuff that you're accomplishing or not accomplishing, then don't do it. So I'd say, investigate what your motives are when you do it. So I didn't expect that to turn into such a serious answer, but there you go.
You always give serious answers. Everybody knows that.
Yeah, I can't kill the university lecture
So
in me.
Gilder's Levy says, "Oh, the truth is starting to come to the surface. LOL, you two are funny." J.M. Watkins says, "Hello from New York City." Joy said, "So funny, I did destroy the goldfinch. I ripped it out of the journal." J.M. Watkins says they've got to rewind so they can see it from the beginning. Lil Devette says, "I call the paintings I'm not happy with my nope paintings."
That's fun.
Akraf Abasadia says, "I used to destroy my art because I didn't want people to see it because it used to be trash. It was a good decision." And Joyce said, "Nope is funny."
Yeah, nope is funny. I just feel like, it's funny to me is that when you have that stuff, I mean, for me, I feel like that's why journals don't survive in my house, right? Because I used to have I bought watercolor journals and then I gave a lot of them away to students, patrons, and the one or two that I kept, I sort of pulled apart. And it was for that reason. It's because I'm like, I don't like this page, I'm tearing this out. I don't like this page, I'm tearing this page out. It's like, well, what's the point of having a journal? You're sort of making it threadbare and it's losing its hair, right? All of its few pages are gone in the middle here and there and ripped out and it looks ugly. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm not much of a journal person. Plus being a lefty, being left-handed, I usually start the journal in the wrong direction and then later on realize that that's not the comfortable direction for me. And, so just bound things ended up being more of a problem too. So this is like a silky thing that I'm trying to go for. This was, armor, leather, velvet, clear lace, translucent lace. This is more like chiffon. This one I'm trying to go for a satin feel. So I'm trying to imply that through various, coming back over, up and down, and making that darker and lighter in different areas to make that look rather satiny. So hopefully that'll work by the end of it. I love the different fabric textures that you can get from, just working on things. Again, this is a throwback to when I used to do a lot of comic book paintings and stuff. You have costumes and they have all sorts of glisten and texture on them. So you've got to really pay attention to how you can really signal different textures and such with just colors and values and, various highlights. Haven't you ever broken anything that you didn't like?
Never in my life.
Oh, come on. You're an angry
temper.
You're an angry coder. I've seen you code and you're angry. But I think I would be an angry coder too.
Sometimes the failed paintings have a nice area, so I cut that part out and use it as a bookmark.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. You could also collage it into something else if you wanted to. I always feel like I do decoupage and that kind of stuff, and sometimes I can turn it into part of an ornament or a part of something that you can lay down on some kind of furniture and such. So, but for me, it's so much easier for me to say that to other people for my own stuff. If I have something around that I don't like, maybe it's just because I'm so have an obsessive personality of, I don't know, but I feel like it's in the drawer, bothering me. Why is it still here? It didn't make me happy. And so, yeah, I feel like I have to redo it or paint over it or something. Not to say I haven't also ruined things and made them worse by continuing to work on them. That's happened to me too. The number of times I've said, okay, this is an okay piece. I'm 85% happy with it. But maybe I'll be 99% happy with it if I work on it some more. And unfortunately, sometimes that does not happen. So, okay. But I couldn't even do coding, frankly, for me. I don't like stuff that just disappears. I like a physical, that's why I like non-digital art too. I mean, it's perfectly fine if you do digital art, but it's not for me. I like something that I can touch and see and have in person. If it's just on the computer and it disappears, and you know, like if something crashes or burns, whether it's an essay or something else, I don't know, I can't deal with that. That to me is like a really weird stress. It's like, what? They just disappeared. I hated that whenever that happened in college or grad school. You're working on something and you forget to save it or something, and next thing you know, you only have one paragraph and it's almost due. All right, I think I'm kind of okay with
Amy said, being a lefty sucks. We live in a right-handed world, and I always end up with paint or graphite on my arm.
I do too. I do too. Like this entire heel part of it, you know, I try to wear like a really big shirt or mittens and stuff whenever I'm doing certain types of shading, especially because it tends to be really problematic.
Joyce says, I get so OCD about the fail, it has to go.
Yeah, no, there's a person after my own heart. I have to get rid of it if it's around. I'm totally in that basket of people.
And Diane says, you have a great skill at creating different textures. Your Winnie the Pooh painting was especially amazing.
Aw, she remembers that. That was from ages ago. Yeah, I think that was one of those paintings that I had a lot of fun doing that. Because, you know, it was an original painting and I just wanted to really have fun with the textures. Everything from, you know, the felty, flocky, furry teddy bear to the different, you know, the honey and the glistening honey in there and all the different pots and candies and everything in that painting. It's one of my favorite original paintings that I did even to this day, even though it's gotten a few years old, just because of how much fun we had with those textures. And it just goes to show you that if you focus on what you like, you know, when you paint something, you're guaranteed to continue to try hard and get better. Because that's the case for something like that, where I'm sitting there saying, oh, do I really enjoy doing different types of reflective textures and such? And I do. So as a result of that, that's a great way to practice doing that, you know? Okay, so I did that, and I'm going to leave most of this in a highlight. I might throw in another fabric thing over there, but I think what I'm going to do for the rest of this actual costume is put the gold in. So instead of her making her have a ruby necklace and like the white costume that she had, now she's got the opposite. She'll have like I think the metallic gold is what we'll do for the actual jewelry, and then make the costume red. And I do think it harmonizes much better. It really bookends the two sides of the page. And if you have a color that doesn't have the skin tone in it, so less white, it's easier to smooth it down on this paper. So keep that in mind too. Try to restrict your white to the skin tone tints and some of the highlights, because you use too much of it, not only does it make stuff chalky, but it'll make stuff scoot up and lift way more than it would if you just, you know, did it otherwise. So I think that's going to be gold. That's going to be gold. I'll make all of that work on that gold so it makes it pop nice and fun like that, and give a little bit, I think it might be a little bit too red, but try to give just a little bit of...
Kat says, it's amusing, funny to look back at my pieces, especially when Hajra said good values or encouragement, and the piece was ... a real beginner attempt. Joyce said she reminds me of Serena. And Erica says, bonjour from France.
Hello, and thanks for joining us all the way from France. Okay, so let's see. How much time do I have so I know what I need to work on?
5 minutes.
5 minutes?
No, you have an hour. You're on hour number 2.
Okay, good, great.
Or 5 minutes.
All right, so I'm thinking the hair and then the gold accents and then the background. How's that? Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay, so now those 3 people's hair is going to be boring because it's all black. It's the same color, so maybe I'll go straight to the gold accents and then the background, or I don't know, I'm trying to think. Maybe I'll do one person's hair and see if people care about watching the hair, and if they don't, then we'll go to the background. Because the background's fun because it's all those different shapes with the different colors and stuff, you know, it has that great Nouveau feeling to it. So let's see. I think it's turning to a pretty full piece. It's a long time since I've done a single page with so many people on it. It's starting to feel like a Where's Waldo painting. Alright. Okay, wait, the right side under her arm, right here, right? That's there. Somebody was pointing out there's no color there. Why didn't you say something?
Kat has said it 3 times, and I've said it to you every time.
Oh, but you didn't tell me to follow.
You just ignore Kat.
You didn't tell me
That's
to follow up
how
on.
You feel.
I'm sorry, Kat.
No, she's not, Kat. She's laughing at you. Laughing.
I enjoyed the pain. I enjoyed giving you pain, looking at it and saying, it's not done, it's not done. Well, the ear's in. Is there anything else that's missing skin-wise? I don't know why I didn't see that. I guess I was just looking at the swirly-dorly part. This part right here, this swirly part, and not thinking about the skin. But there we go. That part is in. Now we get to do everything else.
AD is here. She said, hello, Hajra. Hi, Elijah. Finally made it onto the stream. Got my own coloring pages and Inktense out. Happy to be here with everyone.
Oh, yay. That's going to be a lot of fun. And I think it would probably be... I wasn't going to make her nails red, but now that there's red everywhere, wouldn't it be cool? I think it would be fun to make the nails red there. So, like we care, because there's not any nail polish in this house, but we can live vicariously through others in a painting. I always felt like paintings, especially when you are at home and not feeling well, let you have sort of a Halloween costume party vibe to them too, because you can sort of enjoy dressing up somebody on the page and doing different colors and having styles, you know, that you wouldn't be able to do, say, you know, unless you were feeling better or out or had the opportunity. So it's always I think it's a nice way to really enjoy doing something that you can't do immediately. Okay, so that's that, and now I think I'm going to do her hair and then her hair. Let's start with the hair on this side first. I've got a ton of black for these guys' hair, like just a whole lot of it. So let's see if I can get that taken care of first. And again, this is what we were looking at yesterday when we were saying make sure you do the dry hair in more of a wet and wet style, right? So that it goes in so it has the softer highlights that sort of taper out. And a lot of the angles here are making it so that the hair isn't really going to be catching a lot of highlights in comparison to his head, because, you know, his head's sort of facing towards the top of this area where that light's coming from, but so we're not going to have as much of that for everybody else's hair, but we can put in a little.
Says you're in the zone.
Am I in the zone?
And Gilders Levy says the hair is a great lesson. That black hair you did blew my mind about how much not black is in a head of black hair. I am learning a lot.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, there's always a lot less of a color, just like with that red costume or that red costume, than you would expect. There's always a little bit less. Okay, I'm going to try to hitch this onto my drawing board so it doesn't fall down, and so let me just hitch that over there temporarily. It's underneath that silicone strap there. I just hope it doesn't if it doesn't bounce too much, it should be fine. And I'm going to have one brush with the water in it and pat it down on the paper towel, and then the other brush with the black in it. And I think, like I was saying yesterday, this is a mix between the dark Payne's Gray and the phthalo blue I have here. But it's giving me a blackish color, and we're going to go with it because it helped us mix a lot of the other costumes that we were doing. And I'm going to go ahead and add that wet now, and I think that this is the area where there's highlights here, is around this area. And then start on the other side. And it just lets you have that soft area in the center, just like that, with the black streaking out from the side. So as long as you have that going on in clumps, like we were explaining yesterday, and you will get the illusion of nice, silky strands of hair. And different way to paint different types of hair, but this is definitely the way to do that hair. And it can go pretty fast, like I'm doing this here, if you've done a lot of it. And you'll pretty much get the hang of it once, and then after that you can sort of really speed through a lot of hair. Because otherwise, if you don't really make yourself familiar with doing hair, you might look at it and say, well, that is a lot of hair to paint, and it's pretty stressful to get done. And actually, if you do a lot of hair and get the hang of it, not only does it become fun, just like shading fabric folds, because I like doing fabric folds too. You can give me a giant dress and a huge cape, you know, on a superhero or whatever it is, and I just sit there lovingly rendering those folds, and that's because I enjoy it as a meditative experience now that I don't have to worry about the technique. So one good thing...
He wants to know if you prepared the paper at all. I don't remember you saying you did in yesterday's stream.
Nope, we did not. We didn't do anything to this paper. Last time, I do have a video on my channel that you can look up, and she probably knows about this, because I think she's seen a lot of those videos, where I prepared one of the pages we did in the past for a Muha study with a watercolor ground. And since that did not go well, the watercolor ground actually made it even harder to paint on the paper with the watercolor or the gouache, and I just didn't have a good experience with it. So I try not to do that, and instead if I have a really cheap paper, I just use gouache on it instead, which is what I'm doing here. And that way you can sort of bypass the difficulty of having to prepare the paper and not having it behave very well. It sort of turned into like Yupo. It was very resistant to any paint that I was trying to put on it. I tried at that time over that watercolor ground. I tried Inktense, you know, blocks. I tried gouache. I tried watercolor. I tried inks. I tried marker, and everything was very much behaving and coming up like Yupo. So I just didn't decide to do that again. And I think if I do use that watercolor ground, the way I would use it up is if I had some backgrounds that I wanted to really have some loose blends in, that's how I would do that. And I've also been using it to varnish ornaments, because it's basically a matte acrylic varnish. So you can do that before you do a gloss varnish over the top and use it as a glue or a collage medium even. So, you know, there's different ways to use it up, but I won't be using it as a ground. I think just the tiny bit of tooth that this does have, even though it's not very strong, is better than not having that amount of catch in this paper. So that's why I don't prefer the slicker surface that watercolor ground provides, because even this has better catch on it, even though it's not very strong. Okay.
Blackriff says metallic paint would be great for the background. And AD says that's my experience as well. Preparing the paper just doesn't work well. Thanks for the new tips.
You're very welcome, sweetie.
And then Natasha says, I haven't tried watercoloring on Yupo, but I've heard some people really like it. I could see it taking forever to dry. I use it for alcohol inks.
Yeah, you have to sort of leave it there forever, because otherwise it just reactivates. I mean, in fact, it'll reactivate even after it dries. It's just that at least you can have it stay put once it's, you know, done drying or whatnot. But you really don't want it to... It's just it's something that you have to treat completely differently. It's its own different base. You know, paper and plastic surfaces are completely different. You know, one's made out of a fiber from a plant of some kind or another, or plant material like wood, pulp, cotton, or linen, and the other one's made out of oil processed chemically to become a plastic polymer. So completely different surfaces. I think I'll give her a highlight down the center there. I'm trying to choose where I want a highlight. I think right here in the middle there would be fun. So that's where I'm going to prep that water and then put the blackish color in on both sides. And it looks like it wasn't enough water, but I can go ahead and disturb that and add a little bit more water to it. And just streak. And if any of the lines go lighter or darker than you'd like, then just come back in and streak some more. Okay, I think that's good for her hair. I sort of just guesstimated where I wanted the colors, and like I said, it's funny for me that a lot of these people have black hair in the story, because you end up making it easy to have that one color out and go for it. But it would have been, you know, I'm glad that there's at least a blonde and a red to mix stuff up here. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing up here. And I think the metallic, like she was saying in the background, it would I think for some of these tendrils that we could have done in the lighter color, I think the metallic for that would be nice. I mean, this wouldn't be a bad fan piece to hang up, you know, just for fun for the book. If you really, really liked the book, then you could paint this thing up and hang it up. Okay. I think I'll probably, thinking I should do the ginger here first.
Kat says the purple metal armor looks so real. Behind, above this gal's head.
Oh, here?
And then AD says you could make one of the males a brunette.
This is true. Let's see, who should we choose? So there's a lot of people with dark hair on this side. So let's make him have dark brown hair. And maybe we can make him have also, like, I don't know, a darkish, brownish hair. So that way not everybody in this piece has black hair. And we can make it dark enough so that people would still say that we're not compromising the characters, I guess. Not that it matters so much to me. But yeah, we can make somebody, let's make him have brown hair at the very least, because, like I said, there's so many people in the way there. Okay, so before I mix that brown, though, let's use up the ginger I have mixed up for her hair. Because now that we're done with the skin tone, I actually have that ginger available for her hair. So let's do that. Oh, could you open that? I think it's the third drawer over there. I don't know if it's the third or the fourth in that.
Or maybe someone needs green hair. What is it with green being the favorite color of the night?
Oh, Kat loves greens.
No, AD says this.
Oh, AD said this?
AD's fallen into the green camp. Which drawer do you want to open?
It's the third one down there. Or yeah, that one. Is that the one with the DVS spare? Do you see it? Okay, now go to the lower one then. The one lower down. I wanted to show people real quick what gouache, the same gouache that I've been using, looks like.
When used on real paper?
When used on arches, yes.
When not used on fan art?
Yeah, when not used on fan art. So this is a relatively easy piece as far as the execution goes. But you can see how much richer the colors show up. Now, of course, we are using a cleaner color palette. But basically, these colors were the colors left over that I painted this piece from. And you can see that brown that we have, that's the on the skin here in these various areas, and the reddish, you know, brown here, and the skin color here. You can see just how much more vibrant it can actually look on a, this is arches, so I think, right? But yeah, this is arches. Arches, hot press, because there's no texture on both sides. So that's one example, and these are the same Creta colors from another live stream like a few years back on arches. So you can see how much more the color sits and saturates on the paper. That will make a difference based on your paper, right? So here's the Phil Martins here, Dr. Phil Martins, or PH Martins, if you're really going to be uptight about that, on Bristol. So this is Bristol, but of course this is very reflective, and see how it sort of gives that reflective sheen on there? That's because the Bombay inks, you know, really make a difference when it's on really flat paper. But yeah, the paper makes a big fat difference. So with the actual technique, you know, is the same, but the saturation of it is very different. So, and here's another example where these reds, okay, so they're the same reds, but I used that red here for this gouache, and it looks similar in saturation in some areas, but you can see how it's sitting on the paper, how it gets dark, and also how it gives you those smooth blends. You just cannot get that with this cheaper pulp paper, right? And let's see if I have another example. Yeah, so here's more. This is Schminke used as gouache. This is from that video that a lot of people liked. But you can see again how it just looks brighter. And a part of it is that we're using brighter colors. There's a lot of blue and indigo and purple bringing the mood down here. But maybe you can see just how the color is sitting on the paper and how it saturates. It actually looks different, you know? So, I think I liked that. And I'm trying to think if there's any other desaturated colors. That's also gouache. This is also gouache. I'm trying to see. That's gouache, but it's very desaturated. So I'm trying to think if there's any other example with a red in it in this particular box. Okay, so this Tarzan might be a good example. Hold on, let's see. Is our Gansai Tombi. So yeah, see, this is a sort of a similar purple underpainting here with how I did that here. And you can see when I do my own drawings, like if I had done this as my own drawing, it would be like half this size because I draw so small and can still paint in detail at that size. But see how it's similar now to this. And that's because this was cheaper paper. This was out of a moleskin journal, and this was also Gansai Tambi and not the Cretacolor gouache. So it's a mix between different things. Same thing for this wizard here. He's also in gouache, and I did this on also hot press arches. But yeah, there's just to me, whenever I am doing a painting, it's actually very useful for me to pull it out and compare the saturation. Oh, and here's an example of this piece being fully opaque. So remember we were talking about doing this semi-opaque? So there's areas where this is translucent, there's areas where it's almost the bare paper, and some areas where it's opaque. So here's an example of where the paint is used fully opaque. But see how much more body it gives the piece? It gives him so much more volume in some ways. So it depends on the look that you're going for, right? This is more sort of a comic book coloring look to it. Whereas, pieces where you basically go opaque the whole way, it gives them more sort of volume and body and weight on the paper. But anyway, just wanted to show that as an example. I guess I was also personally curious to see whether or not some of that right next to it, if it looks brighter or not. Are you all caught up with the comments?
Joy said it is the paper.
Yeah.
Natasha said the bear is so cute. Doctor said white, green, and pink are also popular hair colors for fantasy elves. Toso says beautiful. Kat says she loves the balloon. And Gilders Levy says, you made an interesting focal point with the red fingernails poised over that guy's heart.
Oh, yeah.
He needs to protect his heart and fast.
That's a very cute observation, because yeah, he's sort of stuck in the middle of a love triangle in the book. So where she likes somebody else initially, but they're both destined to be together. So by the end of it, she does end up with him, but he's really nice about it for a lot of it. And then you don't kind of know what his character is. And like I said, it's one of those books where I like the story. Yeah, we're gonna do the redhead for sure down here. But see, here's another super opaque with a lot of purples and done on Fabriano. And just look at the difference. It looks more milky, right? So when you do this transparent, it looks less milky. And when you do it more with gouache, all opaquely, it all becomes a more sort of pastel impressionist. But anyway, you can put that box back now. I don't want anything to drop some paint on or anything, but if you watch my storage tins video, you can see how I store all those watercolors in there now. But yeah, now we're gonna do the redhead. Definitely doing the redhead. Just wanted to stop and compare that. I always do that. I like to have those things on hand and compare. It's probably the best way I've had to learn about different papers and mediums and be able to compare them and then be able to answer those questions when people ask. Otherwise, I have no basis of comparison if I get rid of all of my own examples or don't pull them out, All right, so let's get going here. I think she's got like reddish blonde hair in the actual book, but we're gonna just pretend like it's the color we want it to be, which is more of this. I think it's a honey blonde, so I think that's pretty accurate. That's too much of a dark purple. I'm gonna lighten it down, but that's the color that's supposed to be there. I think it's showing up from behind him, actually. So I think it should be more of that indigo gray. So just want to get that stupid patch of indigo in before we don't want to accidentally paint it the wrong color. I'm gonna lift it out a bit more. I think it's actually on the other palette, just going everywhere. I think this is the palette that had that left over. And it still looks rather purple, because I've given it a purple bias. So now I feel like I'm gonna struggle to cover that up unless I lift it out. It's alright, we can always come back and fix it. Because the purple is quite staining is what I've noticed. It's quite staining. I just don't want it to be super dark back here. But, when it rains, it pours. Alright. I think that definitely killed the purple, and I can come back and add a little bit of, blot that out a bit with the paper towel or the whatever once I'm done with the rest of the hair. But it's supposed to be more blue coming down from up there, and I had that more with that, that color, so I think I'm going to probably blot it out and add a bit more green to it later. I just want to demarcate it as the area that's not her hair. That's the important part, not the color matching at this point. I just don't like it being the wrong color. It bothers me.
Will DeVette says we need a redhead.
Yep, that's what
He says it's lovely having Elijah with us. Great job. Will you both be with us during the streaming art classes too?
Yeah, he will be there. He's being forced to participate.
Elizabeth also says we enjoy seeing your past masterpieces.
Oh, thank you. All right, so I think this is brownie brown. This is more close to the color that it's supposed to be in the book. Now I'm trying to figure out if I want to leave it that color or go more towards a proper ginger. Do you think I should just leave it this honey color, or do you think I should add more red to it? Leave it this color? There's already too much red, huh? Like actual... She doesn't want to look like she's one of those...
Are you asking me or the crowd?
I don't know, I'm asking both.
Probably the crowd, because I don't care.
You don't care?
No.
Alright, well... Speak now or forever hold your peace. Should it be this, like honey blonde color that I'm putting in now? This is the color that it's supposed to be in the book. But does this look fine as a, like, that honeyish brown color? Or should I make it more red? I think between those two colors it looks...
Kat says you should make it Greg.
Greg?
No, then she corrected it with gray. AD says more red.
More red. I can't make it gray. There's already too much indigo and purple in this
AD
piece.
also wants it to be Greg colored.
What are these imaginary colors that I don't know of? Okay, so...
Greg is just gray-green.
Oh, is that what that is?
No. It's just a misspelling of gray.
Why do you say it like it's true?
Kathy O says, yes, the honey red. Sarah Khan says, more red.
More red, okay. So I'm going to make it slightly...
I think the consensus is make it more red.
Okay. Alright, the consensus is make it more red. Okay, so let's see if I put down...
You're going to make it flaming jean gray red?
No, I'm not going to make it flaming jean gray red. It has to look like it's a real hair color. So a bit more towards the red, but like that's good, don't you think? Do you see it?
I mean, they're watching the stream, so hopefully they see it.
Oh, I'm asking you, dummy.
No, I don't have an opinion on the redness of this elf's hair.
Even you saying that sounds so unnatural.
So Akrif says more red. Gildersleeve likes honey blonde.
Mm-hmm.
And Amy says it's better.
Okay. So I think we'll leave it at this color, just so we don't have to keep messing with it.
Data Bear red.
Data Bear red. Okay.
Kathy says that's nice.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to figure out. I think this is a nice. It's kind of still like a I don't know like if it's closer to like a mahogany brownish red, but it looks pretty red. I mean, it looks like it looks like an almost unnaturally red because it's gone away from ginger, so I think it's pretty good. Now the only thing I have to deal with is that I beat up this paper so much in this area, because you know how I was getting those easy highlights over there? This has been so beat up that I'm going to have to come back in with the white to do the highlights for that. So let's try to do the rest of that area, and I'll come back in and try to fix this wounded area with that hair, because right now it just looks like she's got a few octopus tentacles or something hanging out on the back of her head, because it's beat up paper enough that it's getting granulate, you know, like gets that sort of pebbly look to it, is what happens when you like add too much water and lift over and over again. And definitely that black, one of the nice things about it is that it doesn't have a low light color, so you can sort of you know, go right to the white highlight, because black actually has that sharp white highlight. Whereas with red, see, if I'm doing this highlight, it doesn't actually look all that natural. So I'm probably going to have to do a base tone of, let's see, a lighter wash of the red all around. So let me go ahead and do that. I'll use a diluted version of that cranberry color that we were mixing. Actually, not the cranberry, it has too much purple in it. So just what people were referring to as the bandwagon red. Let's go ahead and put that down. I don't want to have a non-white highlight to mix towards, so let's go ahead and do that first. Maybe a little bit more saturated than that. So like this, go all the way around. I think that's a nice thing about black hair, though, is that it uses the fewest colors and also can have really sharp white highlights. The other hair, actually, if you're learning to paint it, is a bit harder because it uses more colors and it does not have white highlights usually. It has low lights that are of different colors. And I think that's still her hair. Yep, that is. people kept pointing out that part of her arm. I was like, what are they talking about? What underarm are they talking about?
Cindy Womack says, is the palette with small wells ceramic, and do you remember where you got it? And yes, I like the honey red.
Okay, well, maybe if I layer over this with the honey red, it'll be a compromise for people, because then it'll be in between the darker red and the lighter red. The porcelain palette that I have with the wells, all the palettes I have, I either got them from Amazon or Dick Blick. I think the one that I have here with all the little wells that I've been showing you that I like to use for gouache, because you end up making so many different tints and tones for gouache that you really need a palette that has more than your 12 generic wells sometimes. So yeah, I got that one off of Amazon, and I think I got it for under 20 bucks. Most of the palettes I have are under 20 bucks. I actually feel quite relaxed today, because yesterday I felt like I didn't think the time was going to run out, and then it ran out a lot quicker.
Well, it's about to run out, you know.
Again?
You've only got 35 minutes.
Now? Oh, okay, great. Does that mean I'm not going to get to the metallics in the background or anything? That's no fun. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to have a wet brush in my other hand, just like I did for when we were painting the black hair, and instead this time I'm going to do that. And I guess, now that we know this is going to be red, shouldn't I move on to something more interesting, like the metallics? I think I'm going to do that, because if I only have 35 minutes and I want to do something fun and like the metallics. Okay, so I'm going to rinse these brushes off. I know everybody likes to see the gold metallics parts of it, so I think what I'll do is
Metallics are always a crowd pleaser.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. I think what I'm going to do is probably just the inside of this part. I'm going to finish doing the purple shadows on that, so we can get to at least picking out the metallics in that inner circle, and then in that circle all the way around, and also on the jewelry. And then I think, I mean, you kind of seen 3 different hairstyles finished, so except for this one doesn't have the highlights in it either. We only did the low lights and the mid-tone. But you got to see it finish on 2 pieces, two types of hairstyles, even though it's the same hair color. But I kind of feel like with the time being pressing, that I want to go in the other direction and try to finish this off with the metallics. So I think the metallics are really going to look gorgeous. Now, I think that I would have probably gone for silver in this piece as far as metallics, but since we're going to do the gold jewelry, I think I'm only going to do the gold. I think that'll actually be kind of cool with the cool colors and stuff. And so what I do with these sections, and I do this with any of the Muha stuff too, is that if you have the opportunity, try to shade it so that it shades towards a darker or lighter in one direction, like that. So, you end up having a gradient, even if it's just a semi-gradient, and just gives it a bit more interest than if you made it all the same single color. And you can also drop water in, and this is where you could be okay with warping the paper a bit and getting a bit more texture and stuff back there. So it's up to you how much water you want to play with, but that is definitely the place to do it. In fact, I'll do a little bit of it now so you can see what I mean by that. It'll get it done faster too, and it makes it more fun. And if you really wanted to go nuts and not care about the paper, you could add some salt to it. So that's up to you. But gouache doesn't move as far as watercolor does, so you sort of have to encourage it. So, but if you do this, you can give it nice effects in the background. And once we get some of those fill areas, do we have any new comments? I think I saw something pop up on my screen, but I didn't read it before it passed.
People are talking about whether or not bandwagon red is a real color. Gilders Levy says, we have a whole pandemic amount of time for you to do as much art for us as you can. And then AD said, will you live stream tomorrow too? And that she agrees with Gilders Levy, that you should be their live streaming slave. Paint forever.
Oh, in paint indentured service.
Right.
But that would be like the happiest indentured slave. Like if I was an indentured servant and I had to do painting all the time, unless it was like painting a wall, I'd be really happy. But yeah, I probably will try to do one more stream. And I think I'm going to go back to doing original pieces. It'll give me a chance to give you more instruction and more medium help, like, you know, with the actual medium more, because it'll be better paper. And so it'll be a better opportunity to explain some of the mediums and stuff. And my assumption is that I think we probably have to take care of some, maybe our one day a week of shopping or something tomorrow. And maybe we'll do that, but if we don't, then I'll stream. Otherwise, we'll stream on Tuesday. I'm kind of working around this stuff, but over here and then coming around over here. And I think the easiest way to do that, I don't like non-edited videos. That's one of the reasons why I stay away from streams. But if you guys are enjoying it, especially during this time, then that's fine. I can totally do that. Now see me put in more water here, because if it doesn't move, because gouache, like I said, doesn't like to move as much as, you know, a color that's ground finer, like an inkier type of watercolor or more staining type of watercolor. So try to make it move more by dabbing in a little bit more water if it doesn't do that. And like I said, the paper will warp, but I'm going to leave it under something. But this is giving me more dimension in the background than if I had just done it as a single color fill. And then I can come back and do those tendrils in metallic colors. So I can do a silver and a gold, or I could do just gold, or I could do like a copper and a gold or something. Depends on what we feel like looks good. I think gold will look very sort of opulent in this case, so you can sort of put that over there, but come back all the way over here.
And you said we are happy being here with you. Cindy Womack says agree.
Aww.
And then Kat says maybe stream a bit later, please, because she's in Australia and this is like 3 o'clock in the morning for her or something.
Okay, well the classes for the scal thing, unfortunately, we won't change those because they're already scheduled. So those will be from 12 to 3 Pacific Standard Time, because they're already been scheduled by the Santa Cruz Art League. But yes, I can definitely get on to streaming a bit later. So if you want me to, I can, instead of starting at noon my time, I can start more like 2:30 or something, so it gets me started 2 hours later, and you don't have to be up at 6. Now we'll make it more like 8 o'clock or something for when you're up. But I mean, of course, there's always going to be a bad time for somebody somewhere, because people are in Europe too and whatever. So, but luckily we don't have like a giant audience, so hopefully we can just sort of play around with that. Okay, so I'm doing that. Again, I'm not really paying attention to all of the swirls as much, because I feel like, I mean, where we did that down here, it seems like there isn't any capacity for it to look as interesting as if you really make the, I mean, that's where you should really let your paints come into their own, is, you know, the wet and wet backgrounds. Even when I don't do wet and wet anywhere else and have tighter work, I take advantage of that in the backgrounds, because, you know, what else are you going to use these great effects for? So I try to make sure I do that at least for those areas. Move that further down. Just want to try to make sure I get some of that metallic out before this is over, you know?
AD says, yes, it is lovely to be with you. I even like watching the uploaded live streams, but I miss being able to chat real time with you. All options are welcome. Please put out a tip jar too. Kat says, silver looks good with purple. Akrif says, I'm going to buy metallic Uni Posca pens when this pandemic ends. And Kat says, even 1 is fine. I think she's talking 1 p.m., like a little bit later.
Yeah, a little bit later. Yeah, as far as the tip jar thing, there's already a link to my PayPal on my website. So you just go to hajrameeks.com, and that's a link in my description box always. But you can always go to my website, to the About page, and if you're not taking classes at, like, say, the Art League or whatever, you can always, you know, give a little bit of that in a tip jar to the PayPal account that I would get, or you can, you know, like I said, buy art or a print or something, and that way you get something in exchange for that. So it depends on how you want to do that. But, and if you just, you know, want to hang out and watch, then that's fine too. But thanks so much for her, to her for bringing that up. I do think that when it comes to the scal stuff, though, I think that I think I have, like I said, a few people who are interested in from YouTube on signing up for that. I think they'll find it useful, especially because they'll be good at asking the comments. I'm really kind of worried about the older people at Scal not knowing how to ask questions in YouTube comments, and so it'll be nice to have a few people from YouTube there who kind of know how that goes. But see how that looks so much more moody and ambient, and you know, has so much more ambiance than just coloring in the sections here, where even though I was doing that, it was, you know, pretty and fun, but it's the randomness that adds that sort of smoky, misty quality to it. It just makes it so much more fun than coloring right in the lines. And I think they had a blue back here as well, like as a different color. And for some of those tendrils, like some of them were purple, and there was a purple background, and then some of the tendrils were blue. And right now I'm just doing the one purple. I think it's actually probably better that way than, you know, the purple's very close to that blue that they're using. It's like a digital fill color very close to it. But I might come back and do some of those as the blue, but I think really the metallics, like they were saying, I think that's a better option to dress this up. Just have some fun with it. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is I'll come around to this side, and I think then I'll have enough time to go and pop the metallics in all over at least the inner circle. And that'll be nice and fun.
Just you said I'm doing what I can to join in for at least one of the classes. Looking forward.
Yeah, that'll be a lot of fun to have her there.
Gilder's Levy said, I think you could use your artistic license to use whatever metallic colors you feel would work. A blend of colors other than gold would be cool. I also love this interaction with you. Everybody seems to like you. You got no thumbs down this time.
Not this time? Yeah.
Shame on you.
Well, there's only like 20 people, so that's a pretty small crowd to keep happy.
It's true.
Alright, so let's see, we've got this coming down the side here. I think it'll stay. The weird thing about this really cheap paper is it seems to buckle a lot, right? But it sort of falls flat also pretty fast. And I think it's all because I think 3 hours is a good limit for me, because I'm starting to feel that that joint pain in the back of my wrist here. So I think that's also a good limit for, you know, it's good for me to know when I should, you know, start and stop and everything. So that's also a good lesson to learn. But yeah, see how this paper is warping, that it also sort of flattens out pretty quickly. I think it's because it's so thin. But I mean, right now there's like a huge, insane amount of buckles in it from the background, what I've been dropping water into it. But I'm going to leave it under like a heavy book or in a folder, like in a folder and then with books on top. And that should help take care of the weight. And I know I'm going to paint some of these tendrils in metallic, so what I'm trying to do is make sure I have enough dark in those areas so that when I come back around to do that, there's enough contrast. Because if you have too much light purple around, when you go to do the metallic, it's not going to pop. Metallics actually pop the best when there's some dark contrast around, so I'm trying to hit enough areas here with that dark that it does that. And just it being warmer than the blue and the gray indigo that they have on them is giving it a nice bit of temperature variation, because you can see that what they had on, what they're wearing with all those cools, it's very cold apart from that pop of red. So the background, though it's a cool color, is still warmer in the purple than with those grayish indigos and everything. So it's a nice use of limited wet on wet technique, like I said here. And my drawing board
Amy
is...
Baker just gave you like 100 thumbs ups.
Yay!
She probably gave herself carpal tunnel just typing thumbs up over and over again.
But hopefully she knows how to use the copy and paste otherwise.
Gilder's Levy said it also pops your main characters forward and gives the backdrop a 3D look.
Yeah, it totally does. Totally does. Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is a work smarter, not harder type of thing, you know? Which is that, how can you do this and make it look good, make it look intentional, like you did it on purpose? I was saying that to you about another piece that I was working on, which is that if you do something differently and you're doing it for either an ease of something or to cover something up that was a mistake, as long as you can make it look intentional, make it better than what your original idea was, then it's perfectly fine. As long, you know, that I'm not following all of these little tendrils in their lines if it looks better what I'm doing. But if it doesn't look better, then it just looks like I was doing it as a cheap stand-in, right? So always try to look to see if what you're doing looks better and looks intentional, like you did it on purpose and not like as a fast replacement for doing more work, you know? So it's perfectly fine to take shortcuts as long as those shortcuts look like they actually took longer. I mean, that sounds contradictory, but it's that whole work smarter, not harder thing. Yeah, I'd love to see some techie seniors.
Cindy Womack says, I'm looking forward to your color theory class next week. I think your seniors might surprise you and be more techie than you think. Oh.
Yeah.
You're reading these things. Why am I reading these out loud if you're reading them?
I just happened to
I didn't even realize until I got to the end.
You're fired. You're fired.
Apparently.
No, I
You
caught...
can't fire me. I quit.
You can't quit. I wasn't paying you. So...
Then that's slavery. What kind of person who is a slave to streaming enslaves others?
This is quarantine rules. This is what happens. Okay, hold on. I've got just a bit down here. That chatty woodpecker's back. Don't let her run off my scrub jays. Okay, so I'm surprised how non-dominant those scrub jays are. It's like being smarter makes you overly careful, because they are super careful. All the dumber birds are way more brave, because they're like, I'm not going to die doing this. This is not dangerous. Where the scrub jays, being the smartest birds in the world, check out that video from that lecture that I did on natural history and the California scrub jay. Them being super smart actually makes them pretty cagey, including at bird feeders. Okay. Alright, so I think now that I've got the inside purple thing going, I think I'm going to pull out those metallics and rinse this wedge brush off. I really should have shown these at the beginning, what I was using, but if you watch the other stream, you'll see what I used. I used this number 6 wedge, and like I said, the number doesn't really mean anything. It's like a size 2 or whatever in a round brush size. And I also used a 1/8 inch angle. I also used this like spotter in size 0. And I think that was it. Those are the brushes I used. I actually had 2 more brushes out, but didn't end up using them. So I'm going to rinse these brushes off, put them aside, and then pull out the other water cup and the metallic paint and start going to town with that gold on here. That's going to be exciting for the last 20 minutes, right? Let's put this up here. And let me get my water dropper, so I'm going to get up and get the gold, okay? Real quick, just give me a sec. You can talk about something interesting until then.
I have nothing interesting to say.
You have nothing interesting to say? That figures.
You changed the order of all of your things right after you did your art space tour.
I did. I did an art tour, and then right after I did the art tour...
went back and said, I'm moving everything.
No, I didn't move everything. That's just, you shouldn't exaggerate. I only moved the watercolors. So remember those pedo bear boxes that I showed on that art tour?
Featured so prominently.
Yeah, that featured very prominently. They are no longer being, except for one of them. One of them is still used for watercolor pencils, but I moved my watercolor pans into a separate tin. It's because I wanted to see them all together, and I feel like when I wasn't seeing them all together that I was using them less, so I got them out of those tiered boxes, and now those tiered boxes are being used for jewelry findings and such. They're just kind of around.
So Akrabab Basadia says, what do you think of those brushes which can be filled up with water?
Oh, I think they're trash. They let the water out too fast, and if you're trying to do... Now, if you're like, hanging out someplace and don't have anything else, then that's a great replacement for travel. But if you're actually painting something delicate, I mean, I do a lot of pieces, and you saw the pieces that I was pulling out. They're like a quarter of this size and a huge amount of detail. And what ends up happening, of course, is that you take that brush and it leaks water right into your page while you're painting. Even if you don't want it to, it suddenly lets out some water. And plus the bristles are like a thicker plastic nylon and not this really fine nylon that's made to imitate hair. And so I just don't feel like they're delicate enough from the brush point, the actual bristles. And they're also not delicate enough in the actual water dispersion, like the system that's happening there from that cartridge. But definitely if you're on the go someplace, not a bad thing to have. I have some in my travel kit for classes for doing like quick ink and wash pieces, but definitely not something that I feel like works for the kind of delicate work that I do. But so I mean, again, one person's trash can be another person's treasure. So if it works for you and you really love them, that's great. But if you haven't tried them, then just keep that in mind, that that's going to be something that you may not like. So I'm going to go back and change all of these golds to solids real quick. I think I already have everything else here as a solid, just that part, because now that I'm dedicating it to having a lot of gold. And I think the one thing we can do is put in all the gold, and then after that decide whether or not I want to put in a different metallic. I think probably given all the different temperatures in this piece already, I think the gold, because it's warmer, is going to stand out better than more cool metallics. And I think a copper would look out of place, so I think I might just do the gold. And that's probably good, because it's probably what we have time for. And I think she's got a little bit more of her headpiece poking out someplace else. I think this right here is a little bit of that coming from the other side. And that gold. And if I hadn't already painted her nails red and really like them red, like I said, I like that pop of warmth down there. And she is right when she was saying, you know, the person who commented, he or she, when they said that that looks like it's a focal point red. It really is. You know, it's that Henry Matisse, remember? A drop of red is redder than a bucket full. So that little teeny bit of red there is really, you know, powerful in that area.
Amy says she would have voted silver.
Oh.
And Diane says, time for another updated studio art tour already.
I see. I need to feel like I have silver here too. Maybe I can put it onto some of this other stuff. Let's do the jewelry.
Says, do you ever use a hairdryer to dry your paints to speed things up? I loved your art workspace tour you did for us. You're very organized.
Do I ever use a hairdryer? Well, I do have a hairdryer just for that purpose. Have I ever used it? No. I think it's because I paint pretty fast, so you would assume that I would need more of that, but the actual truth of that is, ooh, look at that pop against that red. Red and gold is always awesome, isn't it? I mean, we lost all the little facets that we would have gotten, like, if I'd painted this in a, like, made-up gold using regular paint, like, you know, the different facets would have been different colors and such. But like this, though, I love the gleam of it. It's not surprising people like that. Okay, I got distracted. Metallic stuff distracts me. I'm like a crow. Okay, talk to me about that question again. What was the question?
Do you use a hairdryer?
Do I use a hairdryer? No, I don't. Because even though I paint fast, I actually can move about the painting in different areas. And I also have smaller paintings, and so therefore there's less water being dumped on it anyway. I think the only time I actually ever used a hairdryer that I bought for that, and now it's just sitting neglected underneath the kitchen sink, is it was used for bigger paintings. So when I was painting something that was like a watercolor half sheet, or something around that size, then you want to, you know, dry something off faster. If you put a big glaze down on a big piece of paper like that, it can take eons to dry. So it depends on the size of the paper you're using. So for me, definitely nowadays, no, because I can just move to another section that's drier and just continue painting. And also, even if I'm glazing the whole page, it doesn't actually take that long to dry because my pieces rarely go over the size of 9 by 12. I think the largest I ever go nowadays is 12 by 18. So, and that's very rare. Most of the pieces I do are actually 7 by 10 or smaller and postcard sized and, you know, even smaller than that. So, yeah, so I think it depends on the amount of water you're throwing up, you know, into an actual piece of paper.
As opposed to throwing up, just more generically speaking.
throwing down on the paper, not barfing on the paper. I'm sorry, I got distracted.
Amy said red and gold. Let's change the subject with some comments from your people. Red and gold for the win. And Amy said, oh, squirrel.
Where's the squirrel? That's what made me say throwing up instead of throwing down, because I saw that pop up on the cell phone right by my head. Because, you know,
I think it's from Up. I'm assuming it's the dogs in Up constantly being distracted by squirrels.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Ooh, look, squirrel. Yeah. I am very easily distracted. I think that's why you call me Princess Tandentia, right? Because I go off on tangents, and I really have to have speaking points. That's why I like to, when I lecture, it's actually much more concise because I have speaking points and I don't fall off of that. If you let me randomly speak, we might be speaking about one thing and then be speaking about like John Carter of Mars in 1 second and like, you know, somebody else in another second. So that's always a danger, especially as I get more comfortable and start talking about more and more random things and Elijah's around. Okay, so this is getting very loaded. I'm trying to unload this brush. Sometimes it starts to clump the gold in there because the mica is quite, you know, it's not fine.
Is that because of the mica?
Yeah, the mica is not very fine in comparison to a watercolor gouache, so it actually tends to kind of clog, you know, it can sort of build up and clog and dry out at the same time in the brush, so you have to sort of wipe it off and then also try to add more water to it. But if it doesn't flow down readily, then that's the problem. But ooh, shiny, look at that. I mean, this is not gonna look like gold at all, like the kind of like 3D gold like I did for that Pikachu painting or anything like that. But oh, I love metallic glitter. This has got to be in my genes, I swear. This is why people from my part of the world, my parents and everything, why they like all that metallic stuff and jewelry and everything like that. Look at this, it just looks like magic. I should do one piece that's like completely metallic. So I'm trying to figure out what could be that way. I mean, apart from painting like bubbles on black paper or something on black paper that you're using just metallics for, I can't think of something that would be like amazing with that. I mean, I think what I'm trying to say is I think metallics, for me at least, look best as an accent and not as a whole piece. But if somebody can come up with an idea that I feel like I would like to entertain as a full piece, then maybe I would do a full metallics piece.
Catheo gave a thumbs up to John Carter of Mars and Lil